My uncle, flushed with alcohol, echoed words that cut deeper than any knife. His sentiments found harmony in the nods and murmurs of agreement from the other men gathered around. Emboldened by the chorus of support, my husband unleashed a torrent of criticism, each word hitting its mark with precision. His satisfaction gleamed in his eyes as he reveled in the validation of his peers. I forced a calm facade, swallowing my humiliation and rage with each breath. Then, just as tension reached its peak, my mother-in-law rose from her seat, her gaze a force to be reckoned with. "Is that truly all you have to offer?" Her words pierced the heavy air, silencing the room in an instant. "My name is Emma, and I'm a 40-year-old woman working in a medical office. I met Tom, my husband, a man 4 years my senior, through our shared love of tennis. We've been married for 13 years. Though we both longed for children, fate had other plans, leaving a bittersweet ache between us. My in-laws, who live separately, keep a vigilant eye on us, especially my mother-in-law. Our bond is strong. We often enjoy lunches out and shopping trips together. Losing my mother at a young age made my mother-in-law's presence all the more significant. She embraced me with a mother's love, cherishing me as if I were her own flesh and blood. While our marriage initially thrived, over time, my husband's demeanor shifted. After about a decade, he became increasingly domineering. His once gentle kindness toward me evaporated. Moreover, his workload burgeoned, leading to frequent overtime and business trips. 3 years ago, he was reassigned to a different department, exacerbating our disconnect. He now spends half the week away from home. Upon his sporadic returns, his demands are curt and dismissive. "Dinner," he barks, or "Is the bath ready yet?" treating me as if I were merely a servant. Fed up, I once dared to voice my grievances. "You're not a child anymore. You should at least handle your own clothes," I protested. His response was chilling. "What nonsense is this? Your role is to obey me as your husband. Don't complain, you're my wife." For what felt like an eternity, my husband's accusatory finger jabbed the air, his voice rising in a crescendo of abuse. This ritual of verbal assault would replay whenever his mood soared, a relentless cycle I couldn't escape. His incessant nagging and troublesome behavior left me no choice but to acquiesce. Sitting at the dinner table one evening, I faced yet another onslaught of criticism. "More vegetables again? Am I supposed to eat like a rabbit now? Get some meat on the table. You know your cholesterol's high." Reluctantly, I resolved to reduce the meat intake. But before I could speak, he rose abruptly, flinging the meal I had prepared onto the floor. "No one knows my body better than me. I'll eat out," I declared, but my words fell on deaf ears as he stormed out, wallet and phone in hand, slamming the door behind him. Every day, I scoured the internet for low-salt, low-meat recipes, desperate to accommodate his high cholesterol flagged in his company's medical checkup. Yet despite my efforts, it all seemed in vain. As I stooped to clean up the mess on the floor, a wave of desolation washed over me. 3 hours later, my husband returned, his tune merry, his senses dulled by alcohol. In resignation, I retrieved his coat from where he carelessly flung it, only to catch a whiff of grilled meat mingled with a perfume unfamiliar to me. Doubts that had lingered in the shadows of my mind surfaced with renewed intensity. I had suspected infidelity in the past, but lacking concrete evidence, I chose to suppress my concerns. Yet the distinct scent of that perfume fueled my suspicions like never before. From then on, whenever my husband's temper flared, he would vanish without explanation, returning home only to rush into the shower. Each time, the telltale fragrance lingered in the air, a haunting reminder that something was amiss. Soon his careless whistling in the shower would be silenced unless I confronted the truth lurking within his coat. Bolstered by my growing conviction of his infidelity, I resolved to gather evidence to confront him. 3 weeks later, on New Year's Day, we made our customary visit to my in-laws' home, where relatives congregated for the annual celebration. The table was adorned with a feast prepared lovingly by my mother-in-law, a colorful array tempting the senses. Amid greetings exchanged and well wishes shared, my husband's discontent simmered just beneath the surface. "Don't hold back, Emma. Dig in," my mother-in-law encouraged, to which I gratefully replied. Yet my husband's gaze bored into me with disapproval as I savored the meal, appreciating the effort put forth by his mother. "Where are the chopsticks?" His voice pierced the air, breaking the harmony of the gathering. Hastily, I fetched them from the kitchen, presented them to him, only to be met with another demand. "And the cups?" he queried, his irritation palpable. Shouldn't she anticipate these things without being asked? You need to be more attentive to your surroundings, he chided, his words like barbs aimed at my every move. Despite the presence of our extended family, my husband's verbal assaults persisted. I'm not a mind reader. You have to communicate with me, he insisted, his tone cutting through the festive atmosphere. Suppressing my frustration, I handed him a glass, which he accepted with a charming smile as he sipped the sake poured by our relatives. Would you care for a drink, Emma? My uncle kindly offered, but my husband interjected, she's on chauffeur duty today, dismissing the gesture. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and the other women toiled away in the kitchen, preparing lunch and attending to the needs of the men. Donning an apron I brought from home, I joined the flurry of activity, working tirelessly alongside them, while my father-in-law and the other men reveled in their merriment, consuming one bottle of sake after another. The sounds of their boisterous laughter filled the air. Expressing her sympathy for our busyness, my mother-in-law interrupted our tasks to offer us a respite, serving steaming cups of tea. As we sat together, engaging in light conversation, my husband's voice echoed from the living room, a reminder of the tensions simmering just beyond our temporary sanctuary. Let's spice things up with some honesty, shall we? A little stress relief for the new year, my husband proposed to the delight of the gathered guests. The loser of a round of rock, paper, scissors gets to spill the beans, he declared, his words slurred from alcohol. That sounds like a riot, my mother-in-law chimed in, her interest piqued. Little did she know, I had my own agenda for this New Year's Eve gathering. As the game commenced with enthusiastic shouts, I seized the opportunity presented by my husband's unexpected suggestion. Retrieving something from my bag, I discreetly tucked it into my apron pocket. Amidst the raucous game, the losers vented their frustrations about work and bosses, met with sympathetic nods and murmurs of agreement. It's all too true, the chorus of listeners echoed. Finally, it was my husband's turn to air his grievances, having lost the game of rock, paper, scissors. Anticipation and anxiety knotted in my stomach as I awaited his revelations. My complaint is that my wife lacks attractiveness, and her cooking leaves much to be desired. My husband's words struck me like a bolt of lightning, leaving me reeling in shock. My father-in-law, clearly uncomfortable, hastily cleared his throat. But when you two tied the knot, you couldn't stop praising her beauty and culinary skills, he interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. That was ages ago, Dad. Nowadays, she serves up bland dishes filled with nothing but leaves like rabbit food. My uncle's demeanor darkened at the revelation. It's unacceptable. As his wife, she should step up her game. His sentiments found resonance among the men present. Unbeknownst to them, I had dedicated countless hours pondering my husband's health and meticulously planning our meals. Yet their words flowed freely, oblivious to my efforts. Overwhelmed by a cocktail of embarrassment and fury, I longed to escape. As the conversation shifted to complaints about wives, my husband led the charge. I toil away every day, yet my allowance remains unchanged. Stop your griping and obey me, my father-in-law chuckled in agreement, while the wives, downtrodden, remained silent. Then it was my husband's turn once more. Everyone else is blessed with children, he declared, but my wife is defective, incapable of bearing offspring. His callous words pierced me to the core, shattering the illusion of our marriage. The ache of unfulfilled dreams and the sting of betrayal weighed heavy on my heart, drowning me in a sea of sorrow and frustration. I inhaled deeply, willing the tears threatening to spill over to retreat. It'll all work out, Emma. My mother-in-law's gentle grip on my hand offered a modicum of comfort. With a heavy sigh, she rose from her seat, her countenance dark with a resolve I hadn't witnessed before. Is that all you've got to say? Her unexpected outburst jolted the men, accustomed to her usual gentle demeanor. The once vibrant atmosphere fell into an uneasy silence. Come on now, let's not ruin the fun, my father-in-law attempted to diffuse the tension, addressing my mother-in-law. Fun? Are you the only ones enjoying yourselves here? You should have put a stop to this. My mother-in-law's voice trembled with righteous indignation. Shame on you, speaking to her like that, labeling her defective. How dare you? She continued, her gaze piercing. Yes, she's right. My father-in-law's troubled expression betrayed his discomfort as he averted his eyes. We all have grievances to air, he conceded. Exactly. The women, previously silent, erupted in support, their applause ringing through the room. Let's not hold back. Speak your mind, and we'll all feel better. The words of my mother-in-law ignited a cascade of truth from the women, each expressing their grievances with newfound courage. If you want more allowance, then earn more. Why not take initiative instead of expecting us to cater to your every need? They demanded, their voices ringing with determination. As the wives confronted their husbands with precise criticisms, the men faltered, offering apologies in succession. Only my husband remained unmoved, his indifference palpable. "Why should I apologize for speaking the truth?" he retorted, locking eyes with Noah in a tense exchange. "I refuse to apologize, and I'll say it again. She's unattractive, a terrible cook, and incapable of bearing children." My husband's accusatory finger pointed squarely at me, each word a dagger to my heart. The dam of sorrow and frustration I had meticulously held in check finally burst, giving way to a tidal wave of rage. "You have no right to speak to me like that," I confronted my husband with a measured tone, my hand discreetly gripping the cell phone hidden in my apron pocket. "It's unfair that you're the only one allowed to vent. I have grievances too, you know, and you wouldn't object, would you? You've aired your complaints about me plenty of times. I'd welcome appreciation, but not baseless accusations." With a deliberate motion, I withdrew an envelope from my pocket, scattering its contents across the table where our relatives sat. The photographs revealed damning evidence: my husband entering a hotel room with another woman, then exiting her apartment, hand in hand. Bolstered by my suspicions, I had discreetly installed a GPS tracker in his car, providing irrefutable proof of his infidelity. Originally intended for a private discussion with my mother-in-law, the situation demanded immediate action. Guests filled the room as the truth unfolded, disrupting the once jovial atmosphere. Frantically, my husband attempted to gather the incriminating photos. "Isn't it normal for husbands to stray?" He appealed to the men for validation, but his plea fell on deaf ears. No one in the room offered agreement, leaving him isolated in his deceit. As my uncle, once a supporter of my husband, denounced infidelity with a resounding "No, that's unforgivable," the other men nodded in solemn agreement. Yet my husband remained defiant. "You lot couldn't even dare to stray from your wives," he taunted, his laughter hollow and bitter. My uncle, spurred into action by my husband's audacity, rose from his seat. "Who truly bears the shame here?" he challenged, echoed by murmurs of concurrence from the men, their gazes piercing through my husband's facade. Despite his attempts to maintain a facade of strength and righteousness, my husband's demeanor reeked of desperation, leaving me repulsed by his arrogance. With resolve, I confronted him once more, armed with further evidence. "A week ago, I received a call from Maruka-san, your newfound love," I revealed, each word laden with the weight of betrayal. "She claimed you've been seeing each other for 3 years now." My husband's feeble attempts at denial only served to betray his guilt. "She even mentioned your subordinate, and the fact that she's 7 months pregnant," I continued, unmasking the deceit woven into his web of lies. "She pleaded for a divorce, stating that you refused to acknowledge the child." Fearing my reaction, his protests dissolved into stammered excuses as I extracted my phone from my apron pocket, placing it on speaker for all to hear. "Maruka-san, did you hear what I just said?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Through stifled sobs, her response came quietly but unmistakably. "Yes," she confirmed, her words carrying the weight of truth, shattering the illusion my husband had meticulously constructed. In fact, the day before New Year's, I had reached out to the girl, informing her of my intentions to call her the next day. Seeking insight into my husband's true intentions, she had agreed, and thus, I made the call just before confronting him. Overhearing the conversation, she was overcome with tears and fury. "He told me to wait until our divorce is finalized," she lamented, her voice trembling with betrayal. "I never uttered such words. Surely, as my wife, you understand, don't you? Why would I say such a thing?" "You're the one who betrayed me," my husband countered, his gaze falling to the ground in shame. "I'll never forgive you," she declared before abruptly ending the call, her trust in my husband shattered. Presenting the divorce papers I had prepared, I demanded his signature, only to be met with a storm of fury. "Absolutely not. I can't simply sign this on a whim." "How dare you, sis? Besides, after all this, you'll owe me 2 million yen in alimony." "No, I refuse to divorce you. I simply don't have that kind of money," he protested, his demeanor devolving into childish petulance as he stamped his feet in protest. Witnessing my husband's unprecedented display of immaturity, I nearly chuckled, but remained resolute in my demand for divorce and alimony. Tom, you're not a child. It's shameful. My mother-in-law's frustration with his pitiful behavior was evident as she scolded him with an exasperated expression. You can't just refuse divorce and alimony. Face reality with dignity, I pressed on, my tone unwavering. It's not that simple, Mom. Dad, you understand how I feel, right? My husband appealed, seeking validation. Absolutely not. I can't condone your actions. My father-in-law's response was firm, leaving my husband with little recourse. Reluctantly, he signed the divorce papers and agreed to the alimony, his tears held back only by sheer willpower. Believing this gathering to be the opportune moment to expose my husband's infidelity, I pushed him further. Oh, by the way, I've terminated our lease at the end of the month. One home should suffice for you, shouldn't it? My words were met with applause from the women and deep sighs from the men, and my husband left my in-laws' house, seemingly fleeing from the attention of everyone present. The next day, they filed for divorce at the city office and relocated to a rental apartment I had already arranged. Additionally, I sought 1.5 million yen in alimony from my ex-husband's unfaithful partner. It would have been a harsh blow for the girl, having quit her job upon learning of her pregnancy. But forgiveness was out of the question. After losing his apartment, my ex-husband sought refuge with the girl. Promptly, he acknowledged paternity upon divorce. However, she eventually severed ties, demanding 1.5 million yen per month in child support. Moreover, my ex-husband resigned from his job following the scandal's exposure, making it untenable for him to continue with the company. Left abandoned by his parents and unable to secure a new job, my ex-husband resorted to sleeping in internet cafes and juggling part-time gigs to meet his alimony obligations. Susan, my former mother-in-law, confided in me about his deteriorating health, citing elevated cholesterol levels and the toll his self-indulgent lifestyle had taken since our divorce. Interestingly, Susan and I forged an unexpected friendship post-divorce, growing closer than ever before. Now, I find solace in the tranquility of my life, relishing the peace that comes with solitude.
My name is Kristen, and I am currently working from home as an illustrator. Steve and I have been married for 15 years now. We have a son named Alex, who is in his second year of middle school. He has a mischievous side, and as he is going through puberty, each day feels like it slightly wears on my heart. Currently, our family is living with Steve's parents, a situation that came about at the suggestion of my in-laws. Steve has 2 sisters. One is married and has left home, while the other remains unemployed and mostly stays in her room. We agreed to live together following their request for support. However, this living arrangement has become a significant source of stress for me. Initially, my in-laws were kind, but over time, they began to become more demanding. When working from home, I am criticized as if I were just playing around, and when doing housework, I am told to clean more thoroughly. Without understanding my work from home situation, attempts to explain are dismissed as making excuses. As a result, I have given up on trying to convince or explain to them. I have explained the situation to my husband and asked for his intervention more than once or twice. When Steve spoke to his parents about my work, they dismissed it, saying, "It probably doesn't turn much, and it's just play, not work," and he did not argue further. It's clear I am not just playing around. I have seriously acquired clients, and while my annual income was $50,000 when we got married, it has now grown to $100,000, and I work with numerous companies. I believe Steve understood this, but his true feelings remain unclear. This situation has continued for 15 years, but I do not intend to endure it indefinitely. I have been secretly saving money, and I am close to reaching my goal. Once the goal is achieved, I plan to buy a luxurious high-rise condo and start a new life there with Steve and Alex. Steve agrees with this plan, and I am looking forward to a promising future. "Steve, we're almost at our target amount," I said to my husband, who was browsing on his phone in bed after finishing housework and work. He glanced at me and responded with a lackluster hum. His reaction disheartened me, and I lost the energy to continue the conversation, sighing deeply. "Don't you like it?" "It's not that I don't like it. I'm just wondering how to tell my parents," Steve murmured while fiddling with his phone. Indeed, we have not yet informed his parents about our plan to purchase the condo. However, I was not deeply troubled by this matter. I thought that once the condo's paperwork was advanced to a stage where cancellation was impossible, his parents would have no choice but to accept it. This turned out to be the right approach. After a few months, I managed to save the target amount and successfully acquired the high-rise condo, which is in Steve's name. Although I earn more, the uncertainty of my home-based work made us decide it was safer to have the property in his name, as he has a relatively stable job. Preparations went smoothly, and as the moving day approached, we decided to inform his parents about the move and the purchase of the condo. They were surprised when they learned about the condo but ultimately raised no objections. A few days after the discussion, we moved into the luxurious high-rise condo as planned and started our new life as a family of 3 for the first time since our marriage. We managed to acquire a spacious home with a 5-room layout, including a bedroom for us, a room for Alex, and a workspace for me, where I can comfortably progress my work with no issues. We were enjoying our happy times when, shortly after moving, a request came from a well-known company I contracted with asking me to visit their office. The company is quite a distance from our current high-rise condo, requiring an airplane flight to visit. Moreover, a day trip would be challenging, necessitating an overnight stay. Despite this, I was required to stay at the company for about 3 days, engaging in various meetings that necessitated illustration work. Consequently, I arranged a 4-night, 5-day schedule, shared the information with my husband, Steve, and departed for the state where the company is located a few days later. The meetings with the company concluded smoothly, and I returned to our high-rise condo the following day. Exhausted, I bought some prepared food on my way home and arrived around 6 p.m. Since it was a holiday, I expected Steve to be home. However, upon opening the front door, I discovered several unfamiliar shoes lined up, which at first made me think Alex's friends had visited. But it was clear those weren't the shoes of youngsters. Wondering if perhaps they belonged to Steve's colleagues, I quietly made my way to the living room and slowly opened the door. There, I saw my in-laws relaxing at the dining table. "Excuse me." I approached my in-laws with surprise and greeted them, to which they cheerfully responded, "Welcome back, we're happy to see you." However, I was too perplexed to reply. At that moment, Steve, who had been watching TV, came over to us, and I gave him a look that demanded an explanation. He casually mentioned that after telling his mother about my 4-night, 5-day absence, she decided to come over right away. "Leaving your son and grandson for a trip? What were you thinking?" His mother reproachfully commented after Steve's explanation. "No, it wasn't a trip." I hurriedly corrected her misunderstanding, but the looks on my in-laws' faces were clearly skeptical. "Lies are unacceptable. Was that your purpose for leaving the house?" My father-in-law raised his voice at me, and my mother-in-law joined him with a menacing look. "Could it be that you're engaging in infidelity?" My mother-in-law sneered, casting a contemptuous gaze and mocking words at me. "I'm completely innocent of such actions. It was for work purposes." I raised my voice in defense against the baseless accusation. "Your agitation is suspicious." My mother-in-law laughed, sipping her coffee and taking a deep breath. "Is that really so?" Steve cast a cold glance at me, seemingly taking his mother's words at face value. However, I had already thoroughly explained the situation to Steve and provided evidence to prove it, even sending him photos taken with colleagues at the business trip. Yet, I was frustrated that he harbored doubts, believing his mother's words. "By the way, we've decided to move in here." "What?" Amid my frustration with Steve, this unexpected statement came from my mother-in-law. "To ensure this doesn't happen again in the future, we thought it's necessary to supervise. We've also started the process of selling the house. Moreover, we've changed the ownership of this condo into Dad's name." My mother-in-law continued with surprising comments before I could catch up. I was completely bewildered and looked at Steve for help. He avoided my gaze, clearly confused. "What do you mean you've changed the ownership? That's not something simple, is it?" Seemingly amused by my distress, my mother-in-law looked at me with a smile. "The process wasn't that complicated." As if avoiding further explanation, she stood up and left for the living room where the TV was. At that point, I could only rely on Steve. Later, I took Steve to the bedroom to urge him to explain the situation, but he began to speak reluctantly. It turned out my in-laws had taken a liking to the high-rise condo on the day they visited and decided to move in immediately. Furthermore, considering that Steve's sister would be left with nothing, they preferred to invite her in as well rather than her having nothing. Steve, not fully understanding the details, had casually agreed and changed the ownership to his father's name during my absence. As a result of the change in ownership, we were faced with inheritance and gift taxes. However, my in-laws did not have the funds to pay these taxes, and we ended up having to use our savings to cover the cost. The savings were intended for my son Alex's future, considering the inevitable expenses that would arise. I couldn't help but feel a boiling rage towards my husband Steve and my in-laws for what they had done. However, dwelling on what had already happened was futile, so I had no choice but to accept it. The thought of parting ways with Steve crossed my mind with the resumption of living with my in-laws and sister-in-law, but considering Alex, I couldn't make a clear decision. We returned to the same life with my in-laws as before. Days of mental strain revisited me, but fortunately, work kept me busy enough not to dwell on it much. However, a significant event that would decide my feelings occurred. A month after my in-laws and sister-in-law started living with us, I was once again asked to participate in a meeting with that company. This time it was supposed to be short, requiring only an overnight stay. Despite hesitations due to the presence of my in-laws, it was still part of my work. In discussions with Steve, the initial accusations of infidelity raised by my mother-in-law were brought up, but after promising communication with the company, post-visit activities, and photo sharing, it was eventually agreed that I could go without any issues. So, I'll be leaving now. I greeted my mother-in-law, who was relaxing in the living room on the day of departure, but received no response. My father-in-law, watching TV, glanced at me for a moment but returned to his screen without showing much interest. Without saying anything more to them, I left the high-rise condo. After completing the meeting, I returned home the next afternoon. "I'm back," I announced to my in-laws in the living room, then immediately headed to my office to resume work. However, the room was empty, with many of the materials that were supposed to be there gone. At first, I couldn't understand the situation and why everything had disappeared, but I quickly realized it was the work of my in-laws and confronted them. "Mother, all the materials in my office are gone. Where did you put them? What are you making such a fuss about?" She retorted when I hurried into the room, momentarily taken aback but then starting to sip her tea with an accustomed demeanor. "Those books and documents, they were essential for my work. And that work? Filled with drawings that don't seem practical?" Despite my earnest explanation, my mother-in-law laughed dismissively, unwilling to listen. "Those were very important to me. Where did you put them? You're so noisy." "We've already disposed of them," she said that while showing annoyance and eventually admitting to throwing them away. I was speechless at her words, finding myself unable to say anything more to her. "Mia needs her own room. She can't always be with us." My mother-in-law explained that after moving, there wasn't enough room, so my sister-in-law had been sharing with my in-laws. However, exhausted by my sister-in-law's late-night activities, my in-laws decided without consulting me to give her my office, which stored materials and artwork crucial for my work. These were of immeasurable value to me. Hearing that my things were disposed of, I silently returned to my office from the living room. How much time had passed? While lying on the floor, devoid of motivation, Alex came into the room. "Mom, is something wrong?" Noticing Alex had come home and it was already dark outside, I responded, Yeah, I'm fine. Welcome back." After he opened the door and saw the state of the office, he looked at me silently. "Did something happen?" While puzzled by his reaction, I asked with a smile, only for him to look back at me seriously. "Mom, aren't you going to divorce?" His unexpected question left me speechless. "I know. Grandma and Grandpa have been harsh on you, and Dad isn't supporting you, right?" Alex stood in front of me, turning on the light and sitting down on the floor. I couldn't grasp his words immediately, just staring back at him. "If things keep going like this, you'll get sick," he said before leaving the room. Immediately after, I received a summons from my mother-in-law and was ordered to start preparing dinner right away, so I quickly began the meal preparations. Even while cooking dinner, the words my son Alex had uttered were racing through my mind. I had been postponing the decision to divorce, considering my son, but never expected him to actually bring up the subject of divorce. The fact that my son made such a statement was a huge shock to me. However, that incident solidified my decision to divorce, and the next day, I promptly obtained a divorce form from the city hall. That evening, as soon as my husband Steve returned home, I presented the divorce form in front of my in-laws. "What's this?" Steve looked over the divorce form, not fully grasping its significance. "What's going on?" My mother-in-law approached to check the form immediately after. "Wait, what's this?" "A divorce form." Her seemingly pleased remark made it clear to Steve that I wanted a divorce, and he suddenly focused on me. "Let's get a divorce." Upon my declaration, Steve's complexion turned pale rapidly. "Why all of a sudden?" He slammed the table vehemently, pressing me for an answer. "Well, I think it's entirely reasonable. After all, you were a wife who couldn't show much skill in either household chores or your profession. My mother-in-law said that half-jokingly, pushing the conversation further towards me as my husband panicked. Caught off guard by her unexpected words, Steve paused and turned to look at my mother-in-law. Perhaps, if a wife in such a situation were to leave, you might find yourself free again, she suggested to Steve. Honestly, you don't need a wife like her. My father-in-law also took the opportunity to express a similar sentiment to Steve. Faced with a series of comments from the family, Steve hesitated but ultimately seemed to agree and decided to sign the divorce form, handing it to me. I sincerely thank you. I took the signed divorce form and went to my son Alex's room, expressing deep gratitude. Upon opening the room, Alex was immersed in studying or something else, concentrated at his desk. Alex, we're going to be leaving this place, I softly said to his back, and he put down his pen and slowly turned towards me. I understand. Alex responded quietly yet firmly, and then turned back to continue what he was doing. Receiving my son's understanding response, I gently closed the door and began preparing for what was to come in the house. I quickly arranged the moving preparations and submitted the divorce form at the city hall the following day. After Steve signed the divorce form, it took only about a week for me and my son to leave the house and take the first step towards starting a new life. Facing a new beginning, my son and I held hope for the future, determined to move forward while leaving the past behind. Since the new residence was already decided, I arranged for movers to transport our belongings, and during the process, I made one last visit to the living room to bid farewell to my in-laws. However, my in-laws ignored my presence, not giving me a second glance. Thank you for everything, I said politely, but received no response from them. I hope you continue to work hard on the payments, I added with a hint of sarcasm, which made my mother-in-law turn to me abruptly. What do you mean by that? She asked. The monthly payments for the high-rise condo, $3,500. Good luck with that. You think you've won? It's clear that without our son, your lives won't be sustainable. My mother-in-law sneered. No, we'll be fine, I calmly replied. My mother-in-law approached me with a displeased look. What do you mean you'll be fine? Even now, you're putting on a brave face. She confronted me. I'm just stating the facts. Actually, I have an income, I quietly counted. This was a fact unknown to my in-laws. At one time, Steve was very capable and earned more than me. However, due to the recent worsening economic situation and the loss of his position, Steve's income has significantly decreased. Now, Steve's salary is less than mine, and to be honest, his income alone is barely enough to make the payments for the high-rise condo's mortgage. Impossible. Are you insulting Steve? My mother-in-law angrily confronted me, her face showing her fury at my statement. I'm just stating the facts. If he has to pay a $3,500 mortgage, there's hardly anything left for other living expenses, I calmly replied. How have you been managing to live up to now then? My mother-in-law retorted. She had not been aware of the situation with my work and seemed to believe that I had no income of my own. So, she must have thought that the mortgage and daily living expenses were all being covered by Steve's earnings. As my mother-in-law began to show signs of confusion, I couldn't help but smile. Seeing this, she became even more infuriated. If you're going to live here, please make sure to pay the monthly mortgage of $3,500, I said calmly and thanked my father-in-law, who was sitting frozen on the sofa, before leaving the room. That night, as expected, I received a call from Steve. The subject of the call was indeed about the mortgage for the high-rise condo. It seemed Steve had not thought about the mortgage issue until he heard from my mother-in-law and hurriedly contacted me. Hey, what's this $3,500 about? He said over the phone. His confusion was evident through the phone. What do you mean? It has been like that since the time of purchase, I responded coolly. What, really? But there's no way we can afford that. Steve argued, probably not remembering the details. I'm no longer concerned with that matter. Goodbye, I said and promptly hung up the phone. Immediately after, I stopped accepting any calls from Steve or my in-laws. From that moment, I felt completely relieved, filled with a sense of serves them right towards them. Later, I learned from a colleague and friend of Steve's about what happened next. Steve ended up in deep debt due to failing to keep up with the loan payments and was eventually driven to bankruptcy. Naturally, my in-laws and sister-in-law didn't have the funds to make the payments either and also faced bankruptcy. Steve managed to keep his job but now has to support not only himself but also the other three, taking up night jobs and becoming increasingly worn out day by day. Moreover, Steve has reached the point of asking for financial assistance at work, completely ruining his credibility. Even former friends, including those from work, now avoid any association with him. There were even demands from Steve's parents for severance pay, indicating they were pushing him to quit his job, which only highlights the dire situation they're in. Perhaps this is their comeuppance for underestimating my profession and coveting the luxurious high-rise condo without knowing anything. Now, I live comfortably with my son, focused on my work, and feeling incredibly happy. All right, finally managed to deliver. I'm glad I made it in time for this mince delivery. My name is Maggie. Since I was a child, I've loved drawing in sketchbooks with crayons and colored pencils, and that hobby has continued into my adulthood. When I was a student, I worked part-time drawing illustrations, which has become the foundation for my current career. Now, I'm enjoying a freelance life, drawing illustrations at my own pace. In addition to illustrations, I also create small comics depicting the daily lives of modern women in fashion magazines. I've heard encouraging words from my editor, like, "Maggie's drawings get a lot of positive reactions from our readers." And through this job, I met my current husband. He held an important position at a major publishing company I was associated with, and initially, our relationship was strictly professional. However, as we worked together, we grew closer. We bonded over shared past experiences, like losing our fathers at an early age. Before we knew it, we were going out for meals and movies together. After one such meal, he confessed his feelings, and we started dating. I had never dated anyone before, so I lacked confidence at first. "Really? You like someone like me? I don't stand out. And I'm just a bit better at drawing than the average person." "That's not true. You're really talented, Maggie. And I love the way you utilize that talent to the fullest." His kind words made my heart flutter. After dating for several years, we decided to get married. After getting married, we enjoyed our newlywed life for a while. Both my husband and I were then approaching 30. I wondered if it was better to have children sooner rather than later. Then, one day, my husband proposed that we live with his mother. I was initially surprised, but I had always yearned for happy family moments since I grew up in a single-parent household after losing my father early on. So, I looked forward to living with my mother-in-law. "Maggie, I have something to discuss. Actually, my mother wants to live with us. What do you think?" "Really? Hasn't your mother always lived alone at her place?" "Yes. She must have her own reasons for wanting this." I was surprised she brought it up to us, newlyweds, but I want to understand her feelings. I hadn't interacted much with my mother-in-law. The only occasions I could do so were during our wedding and other formal occasions. From the start, she seemed very warm and approachable. Her smile and kindness reassured me. My mother has been feeling lonely living by herself. I used to visit frequently, but I've been too busy recently. That must be hard for her. But if she wants to live together, it may be fun living together under one roof. "Really?" "Of course. I don't mind, and I'm looking forward to it." "Thank you, Maggie. That really helps." So, we decided to live with my mother-in-law. My husband was pleased with my decision, and our new life as a family of 3 began. "Maggie, what's your favorite food? I want to make something special for you." "Thank you, mother-in-law. Let me help you with it." "It's fine, Maggie. You relax here." Our cohabitation was going smoothly. My mother-in-law took care of most household chores. I was really grateful for her support, especially because I was exhausted from work. One day, my husband dropped a bombshell. "Maggie, this might come as a shock, but I've been transferred to another region." "What? Really?" I was filled with confusion and anxiety at the sudden news of his transfer. Considering our recent cohabitation, I wondered how this would affect my relationship with my mother-in-law. I thought about ending our living arrangement but couldn't ask my mother-in-law due to the unavoidable nature of the transfer. I also pondered moving with him, but staying in the city was more convenient for my job. Thanks, Maggie. If you ever have concerns about living with my mother, let me know. I remember feeling a bit relieved by his words. Thank you, I understand. In the end, I decided to continue living with my mother-in-law, but this decision might have been a bit hasty. At first, our cohabitation was harmonious. We respected each other's preferences and shared household chores. However, after living together for a short while, my mother-in-law began to change her attitude towards me. She assumed I wasn't doing anything. Maggie, shouldn't you help out a bit more around the house? I'm sorry, I'm quite busy right now. I'm working on this tablet. You say such things, but you're just holed up in the house doing nothing. Even if you draw on that thing, there's no way you can make money from it. No, actually, I work using this tablet, and I support our household with my income. I've explained many times that I work from home, but my mother-in-law didn't believe me. She misunderstood me as a freeloader and asked me to help around the house. I intend to help with household chores as much as I can, but I'm busy with work and can't always help. So I contribute by putting at least $3,000 from my income into the household every month. That's the money my son is giving you, isn't it? There's no way you can pay that amount yourself. No, that's not the case. I tried to explain again, but my mother-in-law wouldn't accept what I said. Despite explaining multiple times that I was contributing a significant amount from my income even though I couldn't help more with the chores, she continued to ignore my words. It was futile, no matter how politely I tried to explain. As time went on, her attitude towards me hardened and she began to berate me. She has never worked since getting married. She occasionally goes out shopping or for lunch with friends, but primarily stays home. Despite this, she was relentless in demanding that I help more around the house, even when I was working hard to support the family. As a result, it sometimes affected my work and caused inconveniences to my colleagues. Under these circumstances, it became difficult for me to maintain credibility and continue working. I needed to find a solution. Then, one day, while I was working in my room, my mother-in-law called out, "Maggie, come to the living room for a moment." I headed to the living room, tablet in hand, to find not only my mother-in-law but also my brother-in-law and his wife, still holding that tablet. "What are you doing?" "I drawing." "Maggie, you still love drawing even as an adult, huh?" My brother-in-law, whose demeanor and attitude were the polar opposite of mine, remarked sarcastically. He was always self-centered, and we've had many clashes even before my marriage, probably because of this. "I'm actually working on this tablet right now." "Work? You're just doodling, right?" LOL. My sister-in-law, with her usual domineering attitude, always looked down on me and threw snide remarks. "No, I'm drawing as a job. We heard from our mother that you can't do household chores or work properly. So, can't you just leave this house? From now on, we're going to live with Mom." They ridiculed and berated me. My mother-in-law looked pleased with the scene. It hurts to be treated this way by family. Since I had urgent work to do, I needed to focus on my tasks. But my mother-in-law didn't like my attitude. "Why are you ignoring me? How rude, especially with that tablet." She yelled. "Wait, mother-in-law, what are you?" Suddenly, she snatched the tablet from me and slammed it on the floor. Why would you do that?" To add insult to injury, my brother-in-law and his wife gleefully stomped on the tablet. The tablet screen cracked in several places, and it wouldn't even turn on. Holding the broken tablet, I was shocked to realize I couldn't continue my work. I tried several times, suppressing my anger to restart my work, but the tablet wouldn't revive. This incident made me realize that continuing to live with my mother-in-law was no longer feasible. So, I shared the incident over the phone with my husband. He was silent for a while, presumably in shock, but then repeatedly apologized. I didn't intend to blame my husband, but I was moved to tears by his kindness. When I told him that I wanted to live with him and not at his parents' house, he was happy. I had previously been worried about living in a remote location due to his transfer, but now I felt that being with him was more important. After deciding to move out, I immediately started preparing to relocate. But during this busy time, a surprising event occurred. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife came to see me. Why are you here all of a sudden? I'm quite busy right now, I exclaimed in surprise. Maggie, we heard you've been contributing $3,000 monthly. We're truly sorry about the other day. We didn't know until our son told us. We had no idea you were contributing so much. I could sense my mother-in-law's intentions. I've told you this before. Anyway, I've decided to move out and live with my husband. Perhaps they realized that without me, they would lose the monthly financial support. Maggie, don't say things like that. Let's all build a warm family together. Mother-in-law says if you leave, we have to pay $3,000. That's unbelievable. The reason Maggie got angry and left is because you broke that tablet, right? What are you talking about? It was Mom who broke the tablet first. Besides, all this happened because of Mom's misunderstanding. That's right. It's not mother-in-law's fault. Maggie doesn't do housework or work. She just stays in her room all the time. In fact, it wasn't Maggie who was contributing money to the household. An argument started between my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife. For me, this argument was very bothersome. Without paying any attention to my mother-in-law, as I continued with my moving preparations, adding insult to injury, she said, Maggie, I have a favor to ask. Without $3,000, we can't make ends meet. Even if you move to my son's place, won't you continue to send us living expenses? She looked apologetic. Why would I give money to dissolve our cohabitation? I chuckled a bit. Don't say things like that. What should I do from now on? My mother looked troubled. That's absolutely impossible. I shook my head. I don't have any money. Huh? I was putting $3,000 into the household every month, right? I thought that was more than enough for living expenses. After a moment of silence, my mother-in-law confessed, I spent the money at a nightclub. I was lost for words. You went to a nightclub? Mom, are you out of your mind? My brother-in-law also angrily retorted. Please, can you support my nightclub expenses? After losing my husband, I've been trying so hard to live by myself. You can sympathize with me, right? My mother-in-law looked like she was about to cry. Absolutely not. I sighed deeply. My sister-in-law nodded in agreement. My mother-in-law's shoulders dropped. She was probably shocked at the idea of stopping her visits to the nightclub. However, I had no intention of helping her. Maggie, I'm sorry for the trouble my mother caused. Let's get along from now on. My brother-in-law apologized. That's impossible. I don't want to live with her and her family. But I firmly refused. After that, I started a peaceful life at the new location where my husband was transferred to. Now, we are enjoying our days in a serene town, and I can work peacefully. During this time, a thought suddenly crossed my mind, the bomb that I had left at my in-laws' place. Just as I was wondering about it, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Oh, mother-in-law, what's the matter? Maggie, what's the deal with the comic you drew? What about the comic I drew? You know, the comic you drew is all about our family, right? Maybe it was. Apparently, the comic drew caused a big uproar at my in-laws' house. It realistically depicted the treatment and words I received from my mother-in-law and the couple, and it seemed to resonate with people of my generation. Although I changed the names of the characters, some relatives knew I was a comic artist, and someone apparently realized it was about my in-laws. My brother-in-law, his wife, and mother-in-law seem to be under fire right now. Because of you, Maggie, everyone knows our secrets. What should we do? But aren't secrets like this bound to come out eventually? Now, how can we face everyone? They even found out I was going to a nightclub. It might be difficult, but please resolve it yourself. How cruel. Feeling a bit refreshed at my mother-in-law's outcry over the phone, I learned that the family faced many difficulties afterward. Due to the contents of my comic, angry relatives gathered at my in-laws, and it was revealed that my mother-in-law had spent a lot of money at the nightclub and was in debt. The debt was so massive that she couldn't repay it by herself. My in-laws had to sell their house to repay the debt, and my mother-in-law started living with my brother-in-law and his wife. It seems she started a part-time job to repay the debt, but it was a tough situation. My brother-in-law and his wife, already struggling financially, faced even more challenges living with my mother-in-law. Eventually, my sister-in-law couldn't take it anymore and left the house after an affair, leaving my brother-in-law deeply depressed. Although I feel sympathy, I can't help but think they brought it upon themselves. As for us, we are enjoying our new life in the countryside. Shortly after moving here, we were blessed with our long-awaited baby. Initially, I was anxious about moving from the city to the countryside, but this area, blessed with beautiful nature, has become an ideal living environment. With the stress gone, we are enjoying a comfortable life. Furthermore, my previous comic was well received, leading to a new fashion magazine job, so both my personal and professional lives are progressing smoothly. I can't help but feel grateful to my mother-in-law and her family for the opportunity to move forward. Alright, finally managed to deliver. I'm glad I made it in time for this mince delivery. My name is Maggie. Since I was a child, I've loved drawing in sketchbooks with crayons and colored pencils, and that hobby has continued into my adulthood. When I was a student, I worked part-time drawing illustrations, which has become the foundation for my current career. Now, I'm enjoying a freelance life, drawing illustrations at my own pace. In addition to illustrations, I also create small comics depicting the daily lives of modern women in fashion magazines. I've heard encouraging words from my editor, like, "Maggie's drawings get a lot of positive reactions from our readers." And through this job, I met my current husband. He held an important position at a major publishing company I was associated with, and initially, our relationship was strictly professional. However, as we worked together, we grew closer. We bonded over shared past experiences, like losing our fathers at an early age. Before we knew it, we were going out for meals and movies together. After one such meal, he confessed his feelings, and we started dating. I had never dated anyone before, so I lacked confidence at first. "Really? You like someone like me? I don't stand out, and I'm just a bit better at drawing than the average person." "That's not true. You're really talented, Maggie, and I love the way you utilize that talent to the fullest." His kind words made my heart flutter. After dating for several years, we decided to get married. After getting married, we enjoyed our newlywed life for a while. Both my husband and I were then approaching 30. I wondered if it was better to have children sooner rather than later. Then, one day, my husband proposed that we live with his mother. I was initially surprised, but I had always yearned for happy family moments since I grew up in a single-parent household after losing my father early on. So, I looked forward to living with my mother-in-law. "Maggie, I have something to discuss. Actually, my mother wants to live with us. What do you think?" "Really? Hasn't your mother always lived alone at her place?" "Yes. She must have her own reasons for wanting this." I was surprised she brought it up to us, newlyweds, but I want to understand her feelings. I hadn't interacted much with my mother-in-law. The only occasions I could do so were during our wedding and other formal occasions. From the start, she seemed very warm and approachable. Her smile and kindness reassured me. My mother has been feeling lonely living by herself. I used to visit frequently, but I've been too busy recently. That must be hard for her. But if she wants to live together, it may be fun living together under one roof. "Really?" "Of course. I don't mind, and I'm looking forward to it." "Thank you, Maggie. That really helps." So, we decided to live with my mother-in-law. My husband was pleased with my decision, and our new life as a family of 3 began. "Maggie, what's your favorite food? I want to make something special for you." "Thank you, mother-in-law. Let me help you with it." "It's fine, Maggie. You relax here." Our cohabitation was going smoothly. My mother-in-law took care of most household chores. I was really grateful for her support, especially because I was exhausted from work. One day, my husband dropped a bombshell. "Maggie, this might come as a shock, but I've been transferred to another region." "What? Really? I was filled with confusion and anxiety at the sudden news of his transfer. Considering our recent cohabitation, I wondered how this would affect my relationship with my mother-in-law. I thought about ending our living arrangement but couldn't ask my mother-in-law due to the unavoidable nature of the transfer. I also pondered moving with him, but staying in the city was more convenient for my job. Thanks, Maggie. If you ever have concerns about living with my mother, let me know. I remember feeling a bit relieved by his words. Thank you, I understand. In the end, I decided to continue living with my mother-in-law, but this decision might have been a bit hasty. At first, our cohabitation was harmonious. We respected each other's preferences and shared household chores. However, after living together for a short while, my mother-in-law began to change her attitude towards me. She assumed I wasn't doing anything. Maggie, shouldn't you help out a bit more around the house? I'm sorry, I'm quite busy right now. I'm working on this tablet. You say such things, but you're just holed up in the house doing nothing. Even if you draw on that thing, there's no way you can make money from it. No, actually, I work using this tablet, and I support our household with my income. I've explained many times that I work from home, but my mother-in-law didn't believe me. She misunderstood me as a freeloader and asked me to help around the house. I intend to help with household chores as much as I can, but I'm busy with work and can't always help. So I contribute by putting at least $3,000 from my income into the household every month. That's the money my son is giving you, isn't it? There's no way you can pay that amount yourself. No, that's not the case. I tried to explain again, but my mother-in-law wouldn't accept what I said. Despite explaining multiple times that I was contributing a significant amount from my income even though I couldn't help more with the chores, she continued to ignore my words. It was futile, no matter how politely I tried to explain. As time went on, her attitude towards me hardened and she began to berate me. She has never worked since getting married. She occasionally goes out shopping or for lunch with friends, but primarily stays home. Despite this, she was relentless in demanding that I help more around the house, even when I was working hard to support the family. As a result, it sometimes affected my work and caused inconveniences to my colleagues. Under these circumstances, it became difficult for me to maintain credibility and continue working. I needed to find a solution. Then, one day, while I was working in my room, my mother-in-law called out, "Maggie, come to the living room for a moment." I headed to the living room, tablet in hand, to find not only my mother-in-law but also my brother-in-law and his wife, still holding that tablet. "What are you doing?" Drawing." "Maggie, you still love drawing even as an adult, huh?" My brother-in-law, whose demeanor and attitude were the polar opposite of mine, remarked sarcastically. He was always self-centered, and we've had many clashes even before my marriage, probably because of this. "I'm actually working on this tablet right now." "Work? You're just doodling, right?" LOL. My sister-in-law, with her usual domineering attitude, always looked down on me and threw snide remarks. "No, I'm drawing as a job. We heard from our mother that you can't do household chores or work properly. So, can't you just leave this house? From now on, we're going to live with Mom." They ridiculed and berated me. My mother-in-law looked pleased with the scene. It hurts to be treated this way by family. Since I had urgent work to do, I needed to focus on my tasks. But my mother-in-law didn't like my attitude. "Why are you ignoring me? How rude, especially with that tablet," she yelled. "Wait, mother-in-law, what are you?" Suddenly, she snatched the tablet from me and slammed it on the floor. Why would you do that?" To add insult to injury, my brother-in-law and his wife gleefully stomped on the tablet. The tablet screen cracked in several places, and it wouldn't even turn on. Holding the broken tablet, I was shocked to realize I couldn't continue my work. I tried several times, suppressing my anger to restart my work, but the tablet wouldn't revive. This incident made me realize that continuing to live with my mother-in-law was no longer feasible. So, I shared the incident over the phone with my husband. He was silent for a while, presumably in shock, but then repeatedly apologized. I didn't intend to blame my husband, but I was moved to tears by his kindness. When I told him that I wanted to live with him and not at his parents' house, he was happy. I had previously been worried about living in a remote location due to his transfer, but now I felt that being with him was more important. After deciding to move out, I immediately started preparing to relocate. But during this busy time, a surprising event occurred. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife came to see me. Why are you here all of a sudden? I'm quite busy right now, I exclaimed in surprise. Maggie, we heard you've been contributing $3,000 monthly. We're truly sorry about the other day. We didn't know until our son told us. We had no idea you were contributing so much. I could sense my mother-in-law's intentions. I've told you this before. Anyway, I've decided to move out and live with my husband. Perhaps they realized that without me, they would lose the monthly financial support. Maggie, don't say things like that. Let's all build a warm family together. Mother-in-law says if you leave, we have to pay $3,000. That's unbelievable. The reason Maggie got angry and left is because you broke that tablet, right? What are you talking about? It was Mom who broke the tablet first. Besides, all this happened because of Mom's misunderstanding. That's right. It's not mother-in-law's fault. Maggie doesn't do housework or work. She just stays in her room all the time. In fact, it wasn't Maggie who was contributing money to the household. An argument started between my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife. For me, this argument was very bothersome. Without paying any attention to my mother-in-law, as I continued with my moving preparations, adding insult to injury, she said, Maggie, I have a favor to ask. Without $3,000, we can't make ends meet. Even if you move to my son's place, won't you continue to send us living expenses? She looked apologetic. Why would I give money to dissolve our cohabitation? I chuckled a bit. Don't say things like that. What should I do from now on? My mother looked troubled. That's absolutely impossible. I shook my head. I don't have any money. Huh? I was putting $3,000 into the household every month, right? I thought that was more than enough for living expenses. After a moment of silence, my mother-in-law confessed, I spent the money at a nightclub. I was lost for words. You went to a nightclub? Mom, are you out of your mind? My brother-in-law also angrily retorted. Please, can you support my nightclub expenses? After losing my husband, I've been trying so hard to live by myself. You can sympathize with me, right? My mother-in-law looked like she was about to cry. Absolutely not. I sighed deeply. My sister-in-law nodded in agreement. My mother-in-law's shoulders dropped. She was probably shocked at the idea of stopping her visits to the nightclub. However, I had no intention of helping her. Maggie, I'm sorry for the trouble my mother caused. Let's get along from now on. My brother-in-law apologized. That's impossible. I don't want to live with her and her family. But I firmly refused. After that, I started a peaceful life at the new location where my husband was transferred to. Now, we are enjoying our days in a serene town, and I can work peacefully. During this time, a thought suddenly crossed my mind, the bomb that I had left at my in-laws' place. Just as I was wondering about it, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Oh, mother-in-law, what's the matter? Maggie, what's the deal with the comic you drew? What about the comic I drew? You know, the comic you drew is all about our family, right? Maybe it was. Apparently, the comic drew caused a big uproar at my in-laws' house. It realistically depicted the treatment and words I received from my mother-in-law and the couple, and it seemed to resonate with people of my generation. Although I changed the names of the characters, some relatives knew I was a comic artist, and someone apparently realized it was about my in-laws. My brother-in-law, his wife, and mother-in-law seem to be under fire right now. Because of you, Maggie, everyone knows our secrets. What should we do? But aren't secrets like this bound to come out eventually? Now, how can we face everyone? They even found out I was going to a nightclub. It might be difficult, but Please resolve it yourself. How cruel. Feeling a bit refreshed at my mother-in-law's outcry over the phone, I learned that the family faced many difficulties afterward. Due to the contents of my comic, angry relatives gathered at my in-laws, and it was revealed that my mother-in-law had spent a lot of money at the nightclub and was in debt. The debt was so massive that she couldn't repay it by herself. My in-laws had to sell their house to repay the debt, and my mother-in-law started living with my brother-in-law and his wife. It seems she started a part-time job to repay the debt, but it was a tough situation. My brother-in-law and his wife, already struggling financially, faced even more challenges living with my mother-in-law. Eventually, my sister-in-law couldn't take it anymore and left the house after an affair, leaving my brother-in-law deeply depressed. Although I feel sympathy, I can't help but think they brought it upon themselves. As for us, we are enjoying our new life in the countryside. Shortly after moving here, we were blessed with our long-awaited baby. Initially, I was anxious about moving from the city to the countryside, but this area, blessed with beautiful nature, has become an ideal living environment. With the stress gone, we are enjoying a comfortable life. Furthermore, my previous comic was well received, leading to a new fashion magazine job, so both my personal and professional lives are progressing smoothly. I can't help but feel grateful to my mother-in-law and her family for the opportunity to move forward. My name is Lucy. Currently, I live with my husband, Alex, in the same house with his parents. We bought this house 3 years after we got married, but soon after we moved in, Alex's parents suddenly showed up saying, "We can't thank you enough for buying a house for us." They brought a lot of luggage, and there was even a moving truck parked behind. As I stood there in shock, Alex nonchalantly walked past me and said, "Dad, Mom, I've been waiting. Come in." Alex's mother said to me, "Lucy, we're counting on you from now on," and proceeded into the house. However, seeing the amount of their luggage, I felt they intended to live here, so I quickly asked Alex, "What's going on?" In response to my question, Alex said, "What's so strange? We bought this house to live with my parents, so I brought them here." I was shocked. I had once mentioned the possibility of living with my parents to Alex, but I had never touched on the subject of living with his parents. Moreover, why did the situation of living with his parents suddenly arise? I was terribly confused. Living with my parents was also a plan for the future, not something immediate. And why did Alex invite his parents without discussing it with me? I asked Alex this when I saw his parents starting to bring their luggage into the room. He seemed to understand that he hadn't discussed living together with me, scratching his cheek and saying, "Well, if we're going to live together, I'd rather it be with my own parents. Otherwise, wouldn't your parents take over this place?" I was so surprised that I just replied, "Huh?" When I had talked about living with my parents, he had agreed. But perhaps he had agreed then just to avoid a confrontation with me. And by inviting his parents first, he prevented my parents from moving in. What are you really thinking? You agreed before when I said my parents would eventually live with us, but now you suddenly brought your own parents. Are they really going to live here? I've been thinking a lot too, but you didn't wait for my response and rushed for an answer, so I couldn't say no at that moment. I didn't rush you at all. I just asked for your opinion. I wanted to live with my parents. Then you should have made that clear when I brought up the topic of living together. Stop acting like a child. Living with Alex, I've realized that he has a very childlike personality. Whenever I do something, he comes over curious, asking, "What are you doing?" Maybe children are easier to deal with. If a child shows interest in household chores, you can suggest, "Want to try?" and they might engage. But Alex asserts, housework is not a man's job. I thought that dealing with a childish adult might be more troublesome than an actual child. Apparently overhearing our argument, my mother-in-law started keeping my distance, advising, "Lucy, you might feel dissatisfied over trivial matters between husband and wife, but some compromise is necessary." I sensed a demand in her words. My in-laws seem to view me merely as an appendage to their son. If they think I'm just an accessory making a fuss about not wanting to live together, her behavior makes sense. From my perspective, Alex is the accessory, but they don't seem to see it that way. My mother-in-law was eager to help with household chores, but their attitude was grating on my nerves. This situation continued, and as I pondered how to respond to their attitude, Alex's sister, Kate, visited. Kate is 5 years younger than me, already married 3 times and currently living with a new husband. When I returned home, Kate was already there. "Welcome back, Lucy. I heard about it. You stood up to my brother and tried to kick our parents out of this house," she said. I was shocked and looked sharply at Alex sitting beside me. Why would Alex tell such a lie? Is it to make me look like the enemy? Alex wilted under my gaze, averting his eyes. If he feels awkward, he shouldn't have chosen words that blame me in the first place. Then Kate, who had been observing, stood up as if to protect Alex. "Lucy, if you're going to make such a face, please leave. Just as I heard, you are a demon wife. It's bad for prenatal education to have you around." Being suddenly told to leave, I was confused about which part of the house she was referring to. For a moment, I thought she wanted me to leave Alex's room where he was enjoying conversation with his sister, but that didn't seem to be Kate's intention. She stroked her belly and said, "I'm planning to give birth in my hometown. So, Lucy, I don't want you in the house. At least until my child comes into this world." Confused, I replied, "What do you mean?" "Wow, Lucy, that face is scary. No wonder my brother avoids you. You might be close to getting divorced." Kate was teasing me with a smirk on her face. When I looked towards Alex, he was avoiding my gaze, looking down. Even if the other person is a dear sister, anyone would stop her from criticizing their wife. However, just as Kate pointed out, maybe Alex is getting tired of me. But being told such things, my interest in him also wanes. I can't forgive him for inviting his parents to live with us without my permission and for speaking ill of me to his parents and sister. His attitude seemed to belittle me. Why should I continue to treat such a person with affection? I felt my feelings for him growing cold. And since there was no room decided, "I'll be using your room. Please organize your belongings. Now, big brother, say something too. It's been hard for you because of the demon wife, right?" Alex hung his head at Kate's words but stood up, pulled up by her forceful hand. Prompted by her, he gave a strained smile and said, "My important sister is going to give birth here, so we don't need you. You can sleep on the streets or something." Reflecting on the 3 years of marriage, I took a deep breath and replied, "All right." Kate exclaimed with joy, raising both hands. "Really? I'm so happy." Alex let out a sigh of relief, as I didn't respond with anger. However, in my heart, I decided to give appropriate punishment to Alex, Kate, and my in-laws. One evening, during a family dinner, I presented Alex with divorce papers. His face was a picture of surprise. "Sign the divorce papers. You want me to leave this house, right? If you don't sign, I'll stay here." "If that's the case, big brother, why don't you sign?" But in the end, I think Lucy won't file them. I often use that trick too. Get them to sign, and if you don't want to divorce, just follow along. It seemed Kate had used these papers in the past to manipulate situations to her advantage. Such a person is bound to be divorced, I thought, but she seemed oblivious. Alex, accepting Kate's suggestion, signed the divorce papers without hesitation. It bothered me that he misunderstood my intention, thinking I presented the papers just as a threat. Normally, such documents aren't presented without the intention to divorce. However, getting his signature so easily made me feel a bit lighter. Now, I could take full revenge on them. The divorce was finalized, and I promptly organized my belongings. At that time, Kate was back home, confirming her plans for childbirth. Hence, she said she didn't intend to come to the house until my belongings were properly stored and the room was cleaned. As a result, I was diligently packing up after returning from work. In the meantime, I found and signed a lease for an apartment suitable for singles and began the process of selling the house. After moving my necessary belongings to the new apartment, I visited my in-laws' house. There, I found Alex, Kate, and my in-laws, all 4 of them together. Knowing that my father-in-law and Alex would be off work that day, and that my mother-in-law and Kate didn't work, I decided to visit when all of them were present. My sudden visit surprised all four of them. Moreover, when I arrived, three of them, except Kate, seemed to have been enjoying alcohol since the afternoon. In their presence, Alex was saying, "Lucky that woman left. She thought if she got angry, everything would go as she wanted." She acted so arrogantly, troubling me. My mother-in-law responded, "Indeed, Lucy had a somewhat difficult personality." The reason I was angry with Alex was that he started living with his parents and even made me leave the house for his sister, all without discussing it with me. I was angry because of his unreasonable actions. However, it seems within the in-laws family, I am somehow perceived as the bad one. Listening further, remember the girl I introduced earlier? It seems he started dating her, but she's a better match than the previous sister-in-law, right? I think a more adorable woman suits my brother better. They discussed his shocking affair. If their relationship started a week ago, that was when I was already proceeding with the divorce, so I guess it won't be an issue of infidelity. But still, his actions infuriated me. I briskly opened the room door and checked the faces of the chatting in-law family. The four of them seemed not to expect my return and were surprised. I came with the real estate agent. Lucy, who is that man behind you?" Alex asked, pointing to the man behind me. Before I could say anything, Kate exclaimed, "Isn't that sister-in-law's new partner? Brother, this is infidelity. Let's make her support us financially." In the midst of everyone thinking Alex and I are still married, I've lost all patience with Kate, who, despite having introduced Alex to a new lover, is now making a fuss demanding money. Amidst this, the real estate agent handed a business card to my father-in-law and greeted him. Looking at the card, my father-in-law wondered, "Why is someone from real estate here?" The agent replied, "To appraise the value of this house." My in-laws exchanged glances and started laughing. "We plan to continue living here, so no appraisal is needed." However, the agent clearly stated, "Actually, this house is in Lucy's name. She wishes to sell it, so we are proceeding with the sale." Upon hearing this, my in-laws showed expressions of surprise, seemingly unaware of this fact. Perhaps Alex hadn't accurately conveyed this information. Alex said he would explain the details himself, so I left it alone. However, from my in-laws' attitude, it was clear that they had not received this information. They seemed to think I was just a burden and that Alex was supporting me by buying this house. So, I planned to explain the truth about the house's ownership and financial aspects to Alex and his parents if the situation didn't improve after a while. However, before I could explain, Alex's sister Kate appeared and kicked me out of the house as the owner. Therefore, I judged that dialogue with this in-law family became difficult and decided to take direct action. That action was to find a new home for myself, complete the move, and then promptly sell this house. Alex seemed to take Kate's words at face value and was complacent, thinking I wouldn't divorce. Seeing Alex's surprised face, I sighed inwardly. Since I, the owner, was kicked out of this house, it makes sense to sell it. It might be, but this residence is mine as well, and since we're married, it's also yours. Right now, my parents and sister are living here too. So what? Whether you or your family are here, it's irrelevant to me. Besides, we divorced quite some time ago. You signed the divorce papers, right? I submitted them to the city hall immediately. At my words, Alex seemed shocked and said, "What?" He seemed to think the divorce papers were just a threat. Disappointed, I sighed again. Then Kate started accusing, "Such an unforgivable woman. This she-devil, using my brother's money to get the house and then putting it in your name. I wonder who she thinks is the cause of this situation." I stared at Kate. "Your beloved brother actually doesn't have any money. He's working, but all his income goes to repaying borrowed money. Why does my brother have debts? Isn't that because he paid your living expenses?" Kate had been married 3 times, but 2 of them ended due to her infidelity. Each time she would say, "Please keep it a secret from my parents." I don't have the funds, so help me, and Alex would comply with her unreasonable requests. At first, I didn't notice, but then I discovered that the savings we were supposed to be building together had significantly decreased and confronted Alex about it. It turned out that Alex had been giving living expenses to his sister Kate without telling me. Despite this, I resolved the house payments using my own savings. I was beyond surprised and felt utter disdain for him for giving his sister such amount of money. Even if he said he would pay back the money in the future, I could no longer trust his word. I hired a lawyer. It was to recover our joint savings that he had squandered. Before I could share this fact, his parents, learning about their daughter's infidelity, exploded in anger. All her past divorces, she said they were due to personality clashes. To think Kate was unfaithful. Such a dirty child. We didn't raise our children to be adulterers. Wait, Mom, Dad, it's just Lucy talking nonsense. This isn't true. Perhaps feeling disadvantaged in this situation, even Alex, who doted on Kate so much, exclaimed, "It's all your fault. Because of all the money I gave to you to support your life, I ended up in debt, and because of you, Lucy and I had to divorce." Hearing this, I said, "Is it really all Kate's fault? It was your decision to suddenly bring your parents to my house, wasn't it? It was you who collaborated with your family to label me a wicked wife. And to think, just because your sister is your favorite, you plan to drive me out of the house, eventually leaving me to live on the streets? That's ridiculous." He tried to cling to my leg, but I kicked him away. "I'll be getting back all the money I paid on your behalf. Prepare yourself, I'm coming with my lawyer tomorrow." With that, I left the house. While we were talking, the house valuation was completed. Fortunately, it looks like the house will be sold as I hoped. The next day, when I showed up with my lawyer and explained the list of expenses he had wasted, his parents, looking at it seriously, said so much money existed, yet because of Kate's actions. They glared sternly at Kate, who was at the corner of the room. It seems his parents came to the house believing Alex's words about taking care of things from now on. But Alex's lies and Kate's adulterous actions had destabilized their retirement life, and they were furious. Alex incurred additional debt. After that, he was immediately kicked out of the house and ended up living in a simple apartment with his family. Kate, facing condemnation from her family, decided to live with her husband for a while and gave birth. However, since the child's hair color was clearly not her husband's, she was kicked out of that house as well. It was difficult for Kate to raise her child properly, and the child was placed in an institution. Kate, with nowhere to go, seemed to have no choice but to return to her condemning family. It seems she is still being asked for money by Alex, but I am free. I am enjoying my independent life and considering trying something new in the future. Can you believe our daughter is coming home and we don't have a room for her? This is troubling. Can you move out this time? I was shocked to hear these words suddenly from my mother-in-law. In the house where I had been living with my husband's family, my mother-in-law labeled me as a bad wife who doesn't do household chores and criticized me daily. Then, they wanted to kick me out to make room for my husband's sister who was coming home for childbirth. We can't keep an incompetent person who contributes nothing to the family any longer. Hurry up and leave so we can free up the room. My name is Tracy. I'm a 33-year-old office worker. After graduating from college, I joined a well-known, large company in my hometown, actively working and living the life of a working adult. As a salesperson, I find fulfillment in dealing with various clients and advancing negotiations. I built my career overcoming numerous challenges and became accustomed to my job. That's when I met Nick, who would later become my husband. Nick, 2 years my senior, was the section chief at a client company. We became close through work, gradually sharing personal stories as well as business discussions. I was gradually drawn to Nick's sincere and kind nature. Apparently, he was attracted to my serious approach to work. It was embarrassing but also very pleasing to hear this later. Our relationship naturally evolved into a romance, and we got married when I turned 30. We rented an apartment in an area with good access to both of our workplaces and started our married life. After marriage, I was promoted to a managerial position, leading a satisfying life both at work and personally. However, there was one concern: my mother-in-law's occasional visits. She, having devoted herself to homemaking from a young age, believes that a daughter-in-law should perfectly handle household chores. "Tracy, you've left some dishes unwashed again. And look at all these piled up laundry. You're so sloppy. What kind of upbringing did you have?" My mother-in-law would say these harsh words whenever she found the opportunity during her weekend visits. I planned to clean up that day, but the atmosphere didn't allow for any rebuttal, and all I could say was, "I'm sorry." In reality, I've always focused on my career and was not good at housework. Therefore, my inability to handle household chores made her look down on me as incompetent. When I was single, I rarely cooked and usually did all the cleaning and laundry on my weekends. After marriage, to reduce the burden of household chores, I invested in home appliances like cleaning robots. Nick understands my personality and doesn't force me to do household chores. On the contrary, I'm truly grateful to him for cooking dinner and doing laundry when he returns home earlier than me. "Mom, Tracy is working hard every day and doesn't have much time. Please don't complain." Nick would defend me whenever his mother said something, but she would just get upset without listening. "Oh, that reminds me, Nick. Our finances are a bit tight this month. Can you send a little more money home?" Suddenly, my previously upset mother-in-law would start making brazen demands with a smile. I sighed inwardly, thinking, "Not again," and resigned myself to the situation. There are many family members living in the house where my parents-in-law reside. Currently, Nick's parents, brother, and grandparents are living there. Until a while ago, Nick's sister, Lauren, lived with them and contributed to the household expenses by working, but recently she got married and left the house. As a result, only my father-in-law and brother-in-law were working after that, leading to a decrease in household income, and they came to struggle financially. In reality, their income was lower than that of our household. Nick started to provide financial support to his parents' home, but his mother frequently visited us, demanding more money. I think it was okay to refuse considering our own household budget, but Nick couldn't ignore his family's suffering. After some hesitation, Nick agreed to her demands. "Okay, I'll send a bit more." That's my Nick. Unlike someone else, you understand. My mother-in-law was satisfied with his answer and gave me a glance. I felt dissatisfied but didn't argue back. I wanted to move away from my husband's family, but our home was convenient for commuting, and it was hard to suggest moving considering his situation. However, our lives changed afterward. There was an issue with the care of Nick's grandparents, who lived in the family home. Originally, my mother-in-law and Lauren were in charge of the care, but ever since Lauren left, Nick's mother's burden increased. It seemed that my father-in-law and brother-in-law left the care to the women and hardly helped. After discussing with Nick, we decided to live together with his family. As we didn't have children, I agreed to this decision but set one condition for Nick. I wanted to continue focusing on my job instead of using my salary for household expenses. I strongly wanted to keep my job and had no intention of quitting. When I expressed my intention, Nick agreed. "Of course, you don't have to quit your job. I don't want to involve you in my family's problems. But I'm sorry it turned out this way," Nick said apologetically. Indeed, living together might increase my mother-in-law's sarcasm. This was my only concern, but we decided to start living with his family, with me continuing my job to support the household and Nick mainly handling caregiving and housework. However, when we started living together, his family wasn't pleased with our arrangement. "It's absurd for Nick to do caregiving and housework. That's the wife's role," said my mother-in-law. It was a response I had partially anticipated, but I wondered why such roles had to be fixed. My parents-in-law and brother-in-law insisted that housework and caregiving were the wife's job and didn't change their opinion. So, they ordered me to reduce my working hours or quit. However, if I were to comply, our income would decrease, and we would continue to struggle financially. To support a family of 7, I need to work full-time. I will continue working as a regular employee, I explained and stood my ground. However, my in-laws remained unsatisfied and deepened their displeasure of me. How can someone have such an opinion? I can't believe how disobedient this daughter-in-law is. My mother-in-law exclaimed angrily, and her attitude toward me became even harsher. Afterward, my brother-in-law also criticized me, using work as an excuse not to help mom. What an incompetent wife. Then, both of them began leading the bullying against me. My father-in-law barely intervened and didn't protect me. Nick's grandparents, who returned to their bedroom immediately after dinner, had limited contact with me and showed little interest in me. After starting to live with my in-laws, my work became busier, and I often returned home late. When I came home after overtime, the family complained that I should come home earlier, looking down on me as if my job was insignificant. I felt deeply frustrated when they belittled my work. I took pride in my job and was committed to my responsibilities as a manager. However, my in-laws kept telling me to prioritize housework over my job, and eventually, I found more peace at work than at my in-laws' house. Once, unable to bear the bullying, I complained to Nick. Why am I treated like this despite earning the daily expenses and even paying for new furniture and appliances for your family's house? Nick listened to me seriously. He understood the problems his family would face if I were to quit my job. I'll talk to everyone. I'm really sorry for involving you in my family's issues, Nick said, and I was filled with gratitude. He must be tired from doing housework and caregiving after work. Later, Nick tried to discuss it with his whole family, but their opinions didn't change at all. My brother-in-law even angrily accused me. You didn't discipline your wife properly, and that's why she has become so selfish. It's your responsibility to train her. My in-laws agreed with him, and their criticism toward us began. I had had enough. The attitude of Nick's own family, who once received financial support from him, was unbearable. Sorry, Nick. I can't live here anymore. We discussed our future seriously in our room. Nick, too, was angry at his family's response and immediately decided we should end this living arrangement and move out soon. If we were to continue like that, our stress would only increase. Therefore, Nick and I decided to leave the house, began searching for a new residence, and started preparing for our next life, keeping it a secret from his family. Half a month later, on an afternoon, Lauren, my sister-in-law who had left the family home after getting married, returned unexpectedly. It was during the weekend and I was off work, so all of us, including Nick's family, were at home. Seeing Lauren return with a large suitcase, my mother-in-law was overjoyed. Lauren, welcome back. Have you had lunch yet? If not, I'll make something right away. Thanks, Mom. I'm really hungry. Lauren passed by Nick and I without greeting us and headed straight to the living room. Hold on a second. Lauren, why did you come back all of a sudden? Nick asked as he entered the living room. Lauren replied, I'm about to have a baby soon. It's my first time, and I feel insecure, so I've decided to come back home for the childbirth. I'll be staying here for a while. My father-in-law and brother-in-law who were watching TV in the living room also seemed to welcome Lauren's return. However, Nick and I were confused. This was because the room Lauren used to use was being used by us then. Indeed, the family home was spacious, but at that time it housed 7 people, and there were no vacant rooms. Before I could say anything, my mother-in-law looked at me and sighed dramatically. What a predicament. Lauren is back, but we're short of rooms. Tracy, could you leave now that we have this situation? Huh? It took me a moment to grasp the intention behind her words. Well, the room you're using originally belonged to Lauren, right? Now that Lauren is back, it's only proper to give it back to her, my mother-in-law stated clearly. Then she laughed and said, we can't keep a useless person who doesn't help with anything around the house here, can't we? While seeking agreement from the other family members. My father-in-law nodded, and my brother-in-law looked at me and laughed. Wait a minute, isn't that unreasonable? Nick argued while I was still in shock. Lauren then haughtily said to me, "You're a wife, yet you don't properly take care of the house. There's no point in you being here, just leave already." However, I was the one supporting most of the household expenses. What would happen to this house if I were to leave? Did they even understand that? Hesitating to voice this out, Nick placed his hand on my shoulder and shook his head in resignation. "It's okay. Let's leave this house together." Nick's words were filled with determination, and he seemed more reliable and strong than ever. We had already planned to end our cohabitation in the near future, so we made the decision sooner. "Understood. Then, we will leave right away." At my response, the entire family burst into laughter. Anger welled up in me toward them, who neither held back Nick, who had been supporting them with housework and caregiving, nor did anything else to help him but laugh. The thought of unpleasant people leaving clears my heart. "When you leave, make sure to take away all your belongings," my mother-in-law declared, so I quietly nodded. We immediately arranged for a moving company and left the family home with Nick that day. The next day, while temporarily staying at a hotel, we received a call from my mother-in-law. It was surprising that my mother-in-law called my cell phone instead of Nick's, but since I had an idea why, I decided to answer. As soon as I picked up, my mother-in-law's angry voice came through. "What's the meaning of this? Today, the movers came and took almost all the furniture and appliances from the house. You arranged it, didn't you?" As I was accused, I simply shrugged in resignation and thought, just as I expected. Nick, who was nearby, seemed to hear her voice as well and gave a wry smile. The movers I had arranged the day before took away all the household goods, including furniture and appliances. Among them were large items like the dining table and TV, and with most things gone, the family was in complete chaos. "I just followed your instructions to take away all my belongings. Everything that was taken was purchased by me. That's why I disposed of them," I replied, and my mother-in-law was at a loss for words. The furniture and appliances that were newly purchased when we started living with them were all actually paid by me. As I asserted they were my personal belongings, my mother-in-law squeezed out a frustrated response. "I did say take them away, but this is too much. How are we supposed to live in a house with nothing?" she exclaimed angrily, to which I calmly replied, "Now that we no longer live together, it's no longer my concern. It must be nice to have a spacious house now that the unpleasant people are gone." I firmly said this, ignored my still complaining mother-in-law, and hung up the phone. I thought she would call back soon, but surprisingly, there was no further call from her. Afterward, Nick and I began a new life in our new home. The furniture and appliances retrieved from the family home were still in good condition, so we moved them into our new place. We spent some peaceful days, but about a month later, we suddenly started receiving frequent calls from the family. Wondering why they were contacting us then, I considered blocking the calls, but I hesitated because there was something I wanted to tell them. Busy with work and unable to answer the phone, I came home one day to find a missed call from my mother-in-law. Nick was still at work, having to work overtime, and was not home yet. When I responded to the call, my mother-in-law's irritated voice echoed, "You finally picked up. What do you need?" I asked, and she hurriedly commanded, "Life has become difficult since you two left. Come back home." Apparently, various payments had started to fall behind after we left. Before living together, the family home underwent extensive barrier-free renovations for the grandparents, and there was still a considerable loan to pay. Nick was paying that loan when we lived together with his family. Additionally, the money I earned was used for purchasing furniture, appliances, and monthly household expenses. But after our departure, they struggled to repay the loan and manage the household finances. The monthly living expenses I paid amounted to about $4,300. The family, who had depended on our income and spent recklessly, had no savings. Unable to cover over $4,000 of monthly expenses, they became desperate and asked us to return. I was just appalled by such a selfish request. "This is the result of you driving out two earners. We have already started a new life and have no plans to return. I refused clearly. However, my mother-in-law was unyielding, saying, "How dare you? This won't do. Put Nick on the phone. Nick is still at work and hasn't returned yet. Actually, we moved to a high-rise condo. We are now living comfortably and peacefully, so we cannot fulfill your unreasonable request," I explained, to which my mother-in-law seemed surprised. Nick and I were secretly searching for a new residence when we were living with his family. And after finding the high-rise condo that met our ideal conditions, we were able to move immediately after being ousted from the family home. Does this mean you're leaving us behind? My mother-in-law accused us with a tearful voice. You have no right to criticize us when you did nothing but depend on our earnings and spent money recklessly. Please don't interfere in our lives anymore, I stated firmly. As soon as I finished speaking, I ended the call without waiting for my mother-in-law's response. I was relieved to have informed them about our move to the high-rise condo and proceeded to block all contacts from his family. This new home was something we had earned with our hard work. We wanted to make a clear statement to his family, who had irresponsibly relied on us while constantly complaining and living leisurely. When Nick came home, I told him about the call from his mother. He had also received multiple calls on his cell phone but was unsure how to respond. I thought I couldn't abandon them because they are family, but I'm tired of dealing with them, Nick said, looking disheartened. He too seemed exhausted from his family's constant dependence. Subsequently, we changed our smartphone numbers and completely cut off contact with his family. Since we only told my mother-in-law that we were living in a high-rise condo, they wouldn't know our exact address. Afterward, Nick and I enjoyed peaceful days together, busy with our managerial roles but feeling fulfilled in our daily lives. 3 years passed, and Nick and I decided to check on his family's well-being after a long time. Since leaving the family home, Nick had not visited even during Thanksgiving or Christmas, so we had no idea how they were living. Upon arriving at the family home, we found no sign of Nick's family. The house was up for sale, and complete strangers were living there. Strange, where could everyone have gone? Nick wondered aloud. Encountering a friend of my mother-in-law who lived nearby, we decided to inquire about their recent circumstances. The events that unfolded at the family home over the 3 years then came to light. Lauren had returned for childbirth, claiming it was temporary, but in reality, she was already divorced and continued to live in the family home even after giving birth. Despite our departure, the addition of family members put further strain on the household finances. My mother-in-law began working part-time, and Lauren soon put her child in daycare to start working, but their nights were filled with household chores and caregiving for the grandparents. The exhaustion from adding child care to their already busy lives was understandably unimaginable. Moreover, Nick's grandparents stopped going out in order to save money, but they both eventually developed dementia. My mother-in-law had no choice but to quit her job to focus on caregiving, but even with Lauren's help, there was a limit to what amateurs could do. Unable to withstand the situation, they quickly appealed to my father-in-law to move the grandparents to a facility. But my father-in-law and brother-in-law refused to listen to them. They were relying on the grandparents' pension and were reluctant to spend on facility costs. As a result, the family's opinions were divided. I can't stand this life anymore. I've reached my limit. Nick's mother cried out in agony and left the house with Lauren and her grandchild. Left alone, my father-in-law and brother-in-law couldn't take care of the dementia-ridden grandparents, and despite hiring helpers, they soon reached their limit. Eventually, they decided to place the grandparents in a facility, but by then, the family had fallen apart and no one returned home. Struggling to pay off the renovation loan, my father-in-law and brother-in-law ended up selling the house and moved elsewhere after paying off the loan. Hearing these stories, Nick showed a sad expression filled with mixed emotions. We asked the neighbors for the name of the facility where his grandparents were staying and decided to visit them soon. A few days later, a neighbor contacted Nick, relaying a message from my mother-in-law. Apparently, she had learned about our visit to the family home. According to her, my father-in-law and brother-in-law were living together and were paying for the grandparents' facility costs, but they seldom visited them. My mother-in-law herself was living with Lauren and her grandchild, working part-time and still struggling with life. I can't stand this life anymore. Please, let us live in a high-rise condo, too. The neighbor conveyed her plea. Hearing such a request, we were just astonished. Nick, too, had grown wary of his family and stopped contacting the neighbor afterward. I don't intend to involve myself with my family anymore, but I do want to keep an eye on Grandpa and Grandma until the end, he said. I agreed with his decision and supported him, focusing more on our work than ever, especially when Nick occasionally felt the loneliness of losing his family. Having overcome difficult times, we want to live even more happily from now on. We plan to cherish our current life, live peacefully, and consider having children in the future. You spend so much time working, yet your income is this low? Are you really that incapable? Huh? Well, if you're just a parasite bringing in only $1,200 a month, then get divorced and leave. My mother-in-law, who never liked me in the first place, finally suggested divorce. Seeing the triumphant look on my mother-in-law's face, I couldn't help but sigh. My in-laws, they don't matter to me anymore. The resentment I had been suppressing towards them suddenly overflowed. Just because I was quiet doesn't mean I was a serious and obedient wife. I've endured everything because she was my husband's mother, but I can't take it anymore. I'll make sure she regrets looking down on me. I am Ashley, and I will be 27 years old. I started dating my husband, Jeff, in college, and we got married 2 years ago. We don't have children yet, but we're living a happy life. Right after we got married, Jeff made a suggestion. Ashley, why don't you become a housewife after we get married? What's up all of a sudden? You talked about wanting to be a housewife before, right? Yeah, but don't worry, I'll work hard and earn for you and our future child. I was honestly surprised by this. Jeff was not exactly a straightforward type and tended to spend his salary on fun rather than saving. Becoming a housewife and losing my income meant relying on his earnings. As a result, his disposable income would decrease. Moreover, Jeff's mother, who loves him dearly, doesn't seem very fond of me. She might see me as the evil woman who stole her beloved son. What would her reaction be if I decided to depend on him as a housewife? The anxiety just kept growing. Even when I talked to Jeff about it, he always said repeatedly, "Don't worry." He asked me to focus on managing the household properly. He claimed he would handle his mother if anything happened between her and me. With him insisting so much, I decided to quit my job upon getting married. And so, I embarked on the path of a housewife soon after our marriage. A year has passed since I married Jeff, and I've gotten used to the life of a housewife, supporting my husband and managing the household. Although my mother-in-law sometimes makes sarcastic comments over the phone, we don't live together, so I don't take it too much to heart. However, recently Jeff's behavior has changed. He seems grumpier than usual and often shows irritation during our conversations. The cause was soon apparent. One day, after coming home from work, Jeff, unable to hide his irritation, said to me, "Hey, let's talk about money." "Huh? Hand over the cash. I'm short, so prepare $300. "What happened?" "I just gave you this month's money, right?" "Shut up. It's the money I earned. There should be no problem, right?" Jeff's salary was entirely managed by me. This was something he had asked me to do when we first got married. If I keep it, I'll spend it all. So, Ashley, please manage it. Since then, I have been giving him a monthly allowance of $300. We tighten our belts and save any surplus money. I feel guilty for not working, so I haven't touched his earnings, covering necessary expenses from my savings. Even though he earned it, I might not have the right to comment on it. But I was truly surprised by his sudden change in personality. Thinking it best not to anger him further, I handed over the $300 as requested. Then, he immediately cheered up and returned to his usual kind demeanor. Thanks, Ashley. Sorry, alright? I went a bit overboard with spending this month. Yeah, don't worry. It's okay. That's right. After all, I'm the one earning the money. Yes, that's true. I always appreciate it, Jeff. From that day on, his financial demands gradually increased. Half a year later, he suddenly announced, "I've quit my job." Wait, what did you say? I've quit my job. My husband, who had come home early, loosened his tie while making this declaration. While I was folding laundry, I asked him, puzzled, "Quit? What do you mean?" "Literally. I'll start looking for another job tomorrow." "Wait, what about our livelihood? We can use our savings, no problem, right?" "But Jeff, you've spent quite a bit in the last 6 months, so there's hardly any savings left. What are we going to do now?" My voice inadvertently rose in response to this unexpected turn of events. At that moment, he scratched his head in irritation and coldly retorted, "You're so annoying. If you have a problem, why don't you earn money yourself?" "What? Really? If you had been working, maybe we could have saved more. Yet, you're doing nothing every day." "What do you mean? It was you who asked me to become a housewife, right? That was just a formality. But you went ahead and quit without hesitation, leading to this situation." "What are you saying?" Normally, I would be angry at his self-centered words, but at that time, I was profoundly shocked. Is this my fault? When Jeff suggested I quit my job, was it just a facade? Was quitting actually a mistake? If I had continued to work, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. Thinking about it now, I think I should have ignored those worries and considered divorce immediately. But he was someone I once loved. It was not easy to detach my heart. Instead, I started to blame myself every day. From the next day on, a series of hardships began. "I'll find a new job." My husband declared that, but he did nothing at home and just fiddled with his smartphone. Even when he saw me working busily, he had no intention of helping. Moreover, he started making rude comments. "Hey, hurry up and find a job." "Huh? I don't mind finding a job, but what about you, Jeff? You're going to look for one, right? You're so annoying. You're not in a position to order me around." "What do you mean? Am I supposed to earn alone? You've been living off me all this time. Don't complain." Unbelievable. During this time, my husband became completely unresponsive. If this continued, our livelihood would be untenable. Reaching this conclusion, I decided to contact my previous employer to express my desire to return to work. The response was positive, and I was able to resume working the following month. After returning to work, the time shared with my husband decreased, and with it, my mental burden lightened. In fact, returning to work after a while brought me joy, and my workplace became my only place of respite. When the first month of my return to work passed, I received a call from my mother-in-law. "Hello, Ashley. I heard you've started working again?" "Yes, that's right. I've returned to my previous job." To my response, my mother-in-law openly expressed her dissatisfaction. "If that's the case, you should have just continued working quietly from the beginning instead of choosing to play the role of a homemaker. Were you so dissatisfied with Jeff's income? Was it not enough for you?" What a vulgar daughter-in-law. No, my return is not because. No excuses. In the end, you're just trying to earn more because Jeff's money isn't enough, right? You're really greedy. That's not true. It's not for that reason. Don't argue back. It's your choice to return or not. But don't think I'll allow you to take more money from Jeff just because you're working again. After saying that, my mother-in-law immediately ended the call. What was that? She was talking as though I'm in the wrong. Doesn't she understand the real reason why I went back to work? That night, I decided to confront my husband about this. "Jeff, haven't you told your mother about quitting your job? There's no need to specifically talk about it." Today, she criticized me over the phone for returning to work. Hey, can't you handle your relationship with my mother more smoothly as a wife? You're really troublesome. What do you mean? I returned to work to protect our joint life. All right, I'll talk to my mom, okay? Are you satisfied now? My husband yelled loudly and stormed out of the room. Left alone, I was overwhelmed with tears. Why do I have to be the one blamed? The reason our current livelihood is sustainable is because I'm working. During this period, my husband's days were spent either by relaxing idly at home or going to the casino. Even though I was the only one earning for our livelihood, he freely spent all the savings. But those savings quickly ran out. Then he made an unbelievable request. Ashley, can you give me some pocket money? Huh? What are you talking about? I want some pocket money. I've run out of my savings. Is that true? I thought we had saved quite a bit by being frugal. Stop nagging. You're earning, so a little should be okay, right? Come on, hurry up. My husband reached out to me with a pleased look. I was truly angry and retorted clearly. This is a joke. I can't do that. At what? What's gotten into you suddenly? Don't ask for pocket money when you're not working. If you need it, you should earn it yourself. Hey, Ashley. What do you mean by that? I supported us in the past, you know. Currently, I'm the one working and supporting our household. If you have complaints, contribute to the household finances first. When I yelled, my husband tried to retort but ended up sighing and started fiddling with his smartphone. Seeming frustrated by my words, a few days later, he proudly reported, I got a part-time job at a casino. From then on, he spent 3 to 4 days a week at his part-time job, earning about $1,000 a month. But he used that money however he liked without contributing to the household. As if bragging about earning from his part-time job, his behavior changed to that of a traditional head of the household. He frequently expressed dissatisfaction with the cooking and cleaning, often insisting, I'm earning too. Then, one day, on a holiday, I was swamped with housework from early in the morning. There's no time to do them on weekdays, and I can't expect him to help. That day, he was out at the casino, providing me with the perfect opportunity to tidy up the house all at once. As I started cleaning, the doorbell suddenly rang. When I checked the monitor, my mother-in-law was there. Reluctantly, I opened the door and she immediately started talking. Oh, Ashley, you're off today, aren't you? Off. Yes, I'm not working today, but working, you mean your part-time job? I've heard from Jeff. Acting so high and important about work when you're only working for such a little income. What? On what basis did she say that? In fact, I have returned to full-time work, not part-time. It's him who's working part-time, and I'm the one supporting our current financial situation. It seems he hasn't yet informed her that he quit his job. Moreover, he has falsely told his mother that I'm the one working part-time to suit his narrative. However, she ignored this and boldly entered the house. Upon surveying the room, she coldly remarked, well, it seems you're not keeping the house in order. How sloppy. I've been busy with work, and I thought I'd catch up on household chores today. Humph, busy with just a part-time job and you can't even manage regular housework. But that's because… What's this? What my mother-in-law picked up was a payslip that had fallen under the desk. It was something my husband had brought back just the day before from his part-time job. Seeing the amount listed, she scoffed. Look at this, what? $1,200. Seriously? That's, well, working all day in a flurry for such a meager salary? How can you be so incompetent? That slip is… Before I could say anything, she cut me off with a be quiet. You spend so much time working, yet your income is this low? Are you really that incapable? Huh? Well, if you're just a parasite bringing in only $1,200 a month, then get divorced and leave. My mother-in-law, who never liked me in the first place, finally suggested divorce. Seeing the triumphant look on my mother-in-law's face, I couldn't help but sigh. My in-laws, they don't matter to me anymore. The resentment I had been suppressing towards them suddenly overflowed. Just because I was quiet doesn't mean I was a serious and obedient wife. I've endured everything because she was my husband's mother, but I can't take it anymore. I'll make sure she regrets looking down on me. I contacted my husband and told him to come home immediately. With his arrival, the truth would come to light. About 30 minutes later, Jeff returned home. As soon as my husband came back, his mother warmly greeted him with, "Welcome back, Jeff. Please break up with this woman." "What's the sudden talk, Mom?" "Oh, isn't this woman just leeching you off, Jeff?" "What?" Surprised by her remark, my husband showed his astonishment. Without paying any mind, my mother-in-law continued, "Acting all high and mighty with just a part-time job while you work hard every day." No, that... Mom, it's okay, Jeff. I'm on your side. Even if you get divorced, as long as you are earning, there's no problem. That's not it, you know? I just saw that payslip. Ashley pretends to be busy. She is only earning $1,200, right? What should we do about that? Mom, actually. Finally, my mother-in-law noticed Jeff's serious expression. "What, Jeff? The payslip you, sir? It's actually mine." "What? Look, my name is here, actually. I've resigned." "What? I've never heard of such a thing. Weren't you supposed to be supporting us with your income?" "Sorry. I didn't want to complicate things. Now, I'm working part-time at a casino." My mother-in-law's eyes widened in surprise as she looked back and forth between her son and his payslip. Trying to reassure her, my husband desperately showed a smile. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm working part-time now, but Ashley is earning for us, too. Your future is safe with Ashley's income." "Why would you say that? Relying on that woman." "Don't say that. We're managing somehow because of Ashley." "Be quiet. Quitting your job without telling me? How dare you?" "Well, there were some issues with my boss, and..." Seeing my husband appease my mother-in-law without any apology to me blew away the last of my feelings. It was more than enough reason to consider divorce. Taking a deep breath, I spoke calmly. "I've decided to leave this house. You and your mother should get along well from now on." "What? Wait, why are you leaving?" "The reason is clear. We're getting divorced." "Divorce? Wait, what will become of me and Mom if we get divorced?" Faced with my husband's immature dependency, I shouted firmly, "Be quiet." Taking a deep breath, I yelled with all my might, "Support you and your mother with my income? That's ridiculous. I am not a servant to such a foolish mother and son. It's unthinkable to have to work hard for such an absurd pair." "Ashley, calm down. Let's talk this out. We can reconcile. There's nothing I want to discuss. It was a mistake to try to maintain this marriage. Live happily with your beloved mother." "But, Ashley, I have no intention of wasting any more time with such foolish people. If you understand, don't ever appear before me again. You fools." Having released all my pent-up frustrations, I quickly began to pack my things. Leaving my stunned husband and mother-in-law in the room, I left the house without hesitation. After that decision, I proceeded with the divorce proceedings and opened the door to a new single life. Now, my ex-husband lives with his mother at their family home. Behind this is the fact that my mother-in-law, furious that he quit his job without notice, has decided to monitor him strictly. "Until I approve of your work, nothing is allowed," is her firm policy. He, lacking thoughtfulness, shows no resistance to his mother's harsh words and complies. He is currently attending interviews for several jobs his mother found, but there's still no news of him being hired anywhere. Additionally, the return of the jobless son to the family home became known in the neighborhood, gradually thinning my mother-in-law's social connections. This is truly a case of reaping what one sows. The mother and son deserve these consequences. As for me, after the divorce, I moved to a new apartment closer to my workplace and am now fully immersed in work, enjoying fulfilling days. I've sworn never to marry again. From now on, I will live solely for myself and spend my earnings only on myself. Is it impossible to increase the living expenses? It's impossible to get by with just $3 a month. Answering a call from my son, a university student who's living alone. I heard something unexpected. What? $3 a month? My voice grew louder in surprise. What on earth was going on? In reality, I had been sending $1,000 to my son's bank account every month. Then, my son continued with even more shocking words. I didn't want to tell you since you were fired, Mom, but living on a monthly allowance of $3 is difficult. Fired. I am a nurse and had just finished a night shift. There was no truth to being fired. To understand the situation, I hurried to my son's apartment. When I rang the doorbell, my son came to greet me. He was thinner than when he was at home, and his complexion was poor. He was clearly living frugally, not even using the heater in this cold weather. I'm using only a blanket to save on electricity. I've been working hard at my part-time job, but with university studies, I'm busy every day. I felt at my limit, so I called you, Mom. When I checked his bank account statement, it was true that only $3 had been deposited each month. I'm sorry for not noticing earlier, but I was actually sending $1,000 a month. How did this situation happen? For now, I'll withdraw some cash from a nearby ATM. I quickly went to an ATM, withdrew money, and handed it to my son. Is it okay to give me so much? Thank you, Mom. I always pretended to be fine in our calls to avoid worrying you. But I'm glad I could tell you the truth today. My heart ached for my son's efforts. Such a situation was unimaginable. Could it be? With these doubts, I told my son, until the cause becomes clear, I'll give you cash directly starting next month. After I changed the method of sending allowances to direct handover to my son, my husband became furiously angry and confronted me. Hey, isn't it the day to send money to our son? What are you doing, slacking off? My name is Rachel. After graduating from nursing school, I pursued my dream job as a nurse and have been living busy days. Romance was something I was uninvolved in, and I never had a serious boyfriend, but I didn't mind much myself. I thought casually that someday I would meet someone wonderful and build a happy relationship. Nevertheless, it seemed my parents were worried about me. Rachel, Dad's friend's son would be perfect for you. Don't you want to meet him? I was surprised by such a sudden suggestion. What? Why all of a sudden? Is it like a matchmaking meeting? No. It's nothing as formal as a matchmaking meeting. Just a dinner with the four of us. Following my father's advice, I eventually decided to attend the dinner. Nice to meet you. I'm Matt. Matt, my father's friend's son, was 3 years older than me and worked as a civil servant. He had a serious impression, but his smile was very gentle and had a heartwarming aura. Attracted to his personality, I quickly developed a liking for Matt. It seemed Matt also had a good impression of me, and after that, we occasionally had dinner together, eventually leading to a relationship. After dating for 2 years, we happily got married. With this joy, we decided to buy a new house together. For me, who had been away from romance for a long time, meeting Matt felt like fate. My father, too, was surprised and overjoyed by the deepening of our relationship, even shedding tears at our wedding. His tears of joy made our happiness even more special. Our marriage brought many blessings from friends and relatives, filling the start of our new life with warm messages of celebration. Not long after beginning our happy married life, I discovered I was pregnant, bringing even more joy to our family. I decided to take maternity leave and parental leave. In our family, a healthy baby boy was born, and we named him Nick. Nick grew up energetically, and every time we witnessed his growth, our happiness only increased. Matt was a wonderful father. Even on days when he came home exhausted, he always actively participated in housework and childcare. I deeply appreciated and felt love for his efforts. Matt, I truly appreciate your help with the household chores. What are you talking about? This is nothing. We are a couple, after all. Matt always replied with a kind smile. Every time I saw his warm smile, I felt my love for him deeply. When Nick turned 1 year old, I returned to my job as a nurse, taking a new step in balancing work and family. We took turns dropping off and picking up Nick from daycare, working together and spending our days cooperatively. Time passed and Nick became a senior in high school. I turned 47 and Matt reached the milestone of 50. Nick, I've prepared sandwiches for a late-night snack. Have some whenever you want, I said, bringing the snack to his room as usual. Thanks, Mom. Sandwiches, that's great. Your snacks give me the energy to study late into the night, Nick said, pausing his studies to smile and express his gratitude. He's always been such an honest and good boy, and I am deeply grateful for a son like him. He was preparing for university entrance exams, aiming for a college outside our state. If he passed, he would start living alone from spring, leaving our home. It's sad, but it's the path Nick chose. We decided to support him with all our might. And finally, the day of the exam arrived. I'm off, Dad, Mom. Nick cheerfully greeted at the entrance, his face slightly tense as he stepped outside. Do your best, Nick. I'm sure you'll be fine. I encouraged him. Keep calm and tackle the questions. You can do it. Matt also cheered him on. Hearing our words, Nick nodded firmly and headed for the examination venue. Ultimately, Nick successfully passed his preferred university. Congratulations, Nick. It's sad to see you leave home, but I'm so happy you passed. I congratulated him. Well done, Nick. You are our pride. Matt also expressed his joy. We celebrated his university acceptance with a lavish feast, sharing in Nick's happiness. Thank you, Mom, Dad. I couldn't have come this far without the two of you. I'll give it my all at university, too. Nick expressed his gratitude. Thus, Nick was set to start living alone in a different state from autumn. To support Nick's tuition and living expenses, I started doing more night shifts to earn the extra allowance. I was managing the household finances and had decided to send Nick $1,000 every month. Although I felt guilty for frequently leaving the house empty due to my night shifts, Matt always supported and encouraged me. Rachel, I really appreciate you working so hard. The $1,000 for Nick. I know it's tough, so it's a big help. Matt expressed his gratitude. Thank you for always being there for me. I can keep going because you're with me, I replied. Thanks to Matt actively taking care of cooking and household chores, I could concentrate on my work. September came, and Nick moved into the apartment we had chosen together, and the remittances began. I transferred $1,000 to Nick's bank account every month. And before we knew it, several months had passed. Did you transfer the $1,000 to Nick this month? You didn't forget, did you? Of course, I transferred it properly. I wouldn't forget, I replied, and Matt showed a relieved smile. But then he furrowed his brows and said worriedly, I wonder if Nick is doing well living alone. I hope he's keeping up with his classes. I just hope he doesn't get involved with the wrong friends. There's no need to worry. Nick said he's enjoying university life on Messenger. Matt, you worry too much. I often smiled at Matt's concern for Nick. I also kept in frequent contact with Nick, ensuring he was doing well and feeling reassured. Time passed, and the season gradually changed to winter. The air outside was cold and breaths turned into white mist. One night, after finishing a night shift, I returned home. Dragging my tired body, I headed towards the bedroom. As I started to change clothes, something caught my eye. There was an unfamiliar lip balm lying there. Is this Matt's? I've never seen this before, I thought, picking up the lip balm from the floor. Matt usually showed little interest in skincare products, particularly not lip balm. Maybe he bought it on a whim because of the harsh winter dryness. However, the packaging of the lip balm was unlike typical men's products, with a sophisticated design more appealing to women. The lid was adorned with glitter, and the product name was written in pink letters, standing out prominently. Intrigued by this odd discovery, I slipped the lip balm into my pocket. That night, when Matt returned from work, I decided to ask him about it. Matt, is this your lip balm? I asked, and for a moment, Matt looked surprised, then quickly smiled and took the lip balm from me. Haha, yes, that's mine. I've been looking for it. Thanks for finding it, Rachel. Where did you find it? It was on the bedroom floor, I replied. Matt seemed a bit flustered. What's wrong? Is there something odd? I asked, and Matt replied somewhat sheepishly. Well, it's uncommon for a guy to use lip balm, so it's a bit embarrassing, he said, scratching his head. It's not embarrassing at all. Many men take care of their lips these days, but that lip balm looks a bit too feminine. Maybe choose something simpler next time? I suggested, and Matt nodded. Yeah, I'll pick a more normal one next time. I actually chose it in a hurry and later realized it might be a bit girly. Anyway, let's watch a movie tonight. That movie you wanted to see has started streaming. He changed the subject. I was a bit puzzled by Matt's behavior in deflecting the conversation, but soon got engrossed in the movie and forgot about it. About a month later, I received an unexpected call from Nick while on my way home from a night shift. Nick, it's been a while. What's up? I greeted him cheerfully. From the other end of the phone, Nick's voice sounded weak. Mom, I'm sorry. I've been busy lately and couldn't always answer the phone. Indeed, I had noticed that Nick hadn't been answering my calls more frequently of late. I had been worried, but since they were communicating via Messenger, I thought there were no major problems. Don't worry about it, it's okay. But you sound a bit down. Is something wrong? I asked and was surprised by Nick's response. Mom, can you increase the amount of the allowance? Living on $3 a month is really tough. What? $3 a month? My voice rose in astonishment. I couldn't understand why the allowance would be only $3 a month. I was certain I had been sending Nick $1,000 every month. I didn't want to tell you since you lost your job, Mom, but it's really hard with only $3 a month. Nick continued, Lost my job? What are you talking about? I was confused and couldn't understand what he was saying. I had just finished a night shift and certainly wasn't fired. As I struggled to comprehend the situation, Nick's troubled voice continued. Wait, Mom, I heard you were fired. So, you said you'd send $1,000 a month at first, but now it's only $3, right? What are you talking about? Anyway, I'm coming over to your place right now. Okay, I'll be waiting. After hanging up, I tried to head to the station quickly. My legs wouldn't move properly in my agitation. I was surprised by this unexpected development and my heart was pounding. Trying to calm down, I took deep breaths. I slapped my cheeks with my hands to focus and quicken my pace to the station. After changing trains, I arrived at the station near Nick's apartment. I contacted Nick on my phone, telling him I would be there soon. When I reached Nick's apartment and rang the doorbell, the door opened immediately. Welcome, Mom. Nick looked shockingly thin and pale, as if he might collapse at any moment. Nick, are you okay? I asked, surprised and worried. Seeing Nick's condition, my heart was filled with pain and sadness. When I entered Nick's apartment, it was chillingly cold inside and the heater was completely off. Aren't you using the heater? It's so cold you'll get sick. Let's turn it on right now. I suggested, worried. No, I can't. The electricity bill is too high. I'm just managing with this blanket. Nick replied, his voice trembling, his thin body shivering. Nick, I've been transferring $1,000 every month to your account since September. There's no truth to me quitting my job, I explained slowly. Really? But only $3 is being deposited into my account every month. I've been working part-time, but with university studies, it's been really busy. I was at my limit, Nick answered earnestly. I believed Nick wasn't the kind of child to lie. His emaciated appearance and the fact that he was living without heating in this cold weather made it clear that his words were true. I understand, Nick. I'm not doubting you. But to find out the cause of this situation, could you show me your bank book? I asked quietly. Okay, just give me a moment. Nick went to look for his bank book. Nick carefully took out his bank book from a shelf in his neatly arranged room and showed it to me. As I looked at the bank book, it was indeed as Nick had said. Only $3 was being deposited each month. Nick, I'm sorry, but truly, I have been sending $1,000 every month. What could be going on here? First, I'll withdraw some cash from a nearby ATM. Saying this, I went to the ATM immediately, withdrew the cash, and returned to Nick. Nick, take this for now. Until we find out the reason, I'll give you the money directly starting next month. Can I really accept this much? Thank you, Mom. I always pretended to be fine to avoid worrying you, but I'm glad I could tell you the truth today. Nick smiled weakly but happily. Seeing his thin frame, I felt a tightness in my chest. I couldn't comprehend how such a situation had arisen. But now, Nick's health was my top priority. First, I needed to take proper care of him. Nick, I'm glad you contacted me. From now on, don't endure the cold, use the heater properly. I'm going to do some shopping now. I'll make lots of your favorite hamburgers and curry. Really? Nick's eyes sparkled with life. After that, I went to the nearby supermarket, bought plenty of ingredients, and returned to Nick's apartment to cook elaborate dishes. Nick joyfully ate, saying how delicious it was repeatedly. I made plenty of food that could be frozen, so he wouldn't have to worry about meals for a while. Then, I'll bring the allowance money directly next month as well. Saying this, I left Nick's apartment. A month later, on the weekend, when Matt returned from work, he confronted me with an angry expression as soon as he entered the house. Today's the day to send money to Nick, right? You haven't been slacking off, have you? It's fine. I went and gave it to Nick directly today. Is there a problem? I answered him, and Matt seemed puzzled. He said, if that's the case, all right then, and quickly headed to the bedroom. When he came back to the living room, then dressed in his casual home clothes, I quickly asked him a question, feeling suspicious. Why did you think I was slacking off with the allowance? Is there a reason? Matt, a bit bewildered, replied, that. Today is payday, and usually it's the day we send money to Nick, but you didn't mention anything about it, so I got a bit worried. But let's leave this topic now. He clearly tried to change the subject while showing signs of irritation. Matt's behavior was unusual and noticeably strange. I have another question, I said calmly. Why do you ask so many questions? Matt responded, appearing annoyed. Do you remember? The lip balm we found in the bedroom before. You said you bought it yourself, but is it actually from your mistress? No, that's not true at all. Matt immediately denied loudly. He continued, looking more upset. That lip balm was indeed mine. I bought it myself. I wish you wouldn't keep asking the same question. You're acting strange today. You're the one who's acting strange. You're usually calm and don't react so intensely, I pointed out. Matt, raising his voice even more, argued back. I'm not strange. I'm just as usual. Do you really think so? Well, I expected this might happen. That's why I invited some special guests in advance. People you know very well. Saying this, I slowly opened the door to the guest room. Sorry for keeping you waiting so long. Please, come in. Responding to my call, 3 individuals appeared before Matt. What, Erica? And even Dad and Mom are here. Matt was so astonished that he was lost for words. The woman named Erica, clearly in a bad mood, muttered, "This couldn't get any worse," and sat down heavily on a dining chair. Meanwhile, my in-laws looked at Matt with a stern gaze, and his face gradually turned pale. 3 weeks earlier, I had consulted my father-in-law, a former bank employee, about why only $3 was being transferred to Nick. My father-in-law quickly investigated the issue and discovered that there were 2 bank accounts under Nick's name. Matt had opened one of those accounts. Despite my offer to set it up myself, Matt insisted, "Leave it to me, I'll handle it." And eventually, he was the one who opened the account. My father-in-law revealed through conversations with bank staff that Matt had opened 2 bank accounts using Nick's name, claiming it was for living and tuition expenses. The cash card and bank book for the account where I had been depositing $1,000 monthly were actually under Matt's control. "I'll manage one of the accounts, so leave the card and book to me," he had insisted, forcibly taking them from Nick. Then, Matt withdrew the $1,000 deposited by me every month from that account for his own use. Moreover, to make it seem like he was still sending money to Nick, he deposited a mere $3 into the other account that Nick had the bank book for. After learning this shocking truth, I was trembling with anger and deeply suspicious about how Matt was using the large monthly sum. I then remembered the charmingly designed lip balm I had found in the bedroom before. Driven by this intuition, I decided to have a detective agency investigate Matt's activities. The investigation revealed that Matt was having an affair with a woman named Erica, his subordinate. While I was out on night shifts, Matt had been secretly inviting Erica to our home. Having gathered enough evidence, I decided to confront Matt with the truth by inviting my in-laws and Erica, Matt's mistress. "Matt, you must be aware, but your misconduct has already been exposed," I told him sternly, and Matt's face turned ashen, his lips trembling slightly. "All the $1,000 sent to Nick each month. You were using it all for Erica, weren't you? How terrible. According to the detective agency's report, you bought Erica an expensive brand necklace. What were you thinking?" Matt vehemently protested in response. "No, I did buy jewelry, but that's not all. I didn't use all $1,000 just for gifts. Erica's mother was seriously ill and hospitalized for a long time. I was providing financial support for her medical expenses. I was just trying to help someone," Matt claimed. "Is that true, Erica? About your mother being sick? Please be aware that lying won't help, as it will eventually be revealed. Can you tell us the truth?" When I asked Erica, she was silent for a moment and then reacted with a bit of anger. "That's a lie. All of it. My mom is healthy and working on the farm in the countryside every day. The story about her being sick is all made up." Hearing this, Matt shouted, trembling with anger. "What? You lied to me? I can't believe it. Do you know how much money I've been giving you?" Erica, without any sign of remorse, laughed mockingly. "Ha, you're a fool for being deceived. I thought I had found a good cash cow, but it's over now. I thought I could milk you for longer, but I miscalculated. Such a shame. A cash cow. You said you loved me. Was that all a lie, too? Your feelings for me weren't real. You do love me, don't you?" Matt was confused, angry, and seemed to forget that I and his parents were present. It was extremely unpleasant for me to see my husband cling to a younger woman in such a pathetic manner. It was embarrassing, pitiful, and above all, deeply unsettling. Suppressing my disgust, I confronted the situation. "Just think about it. How could a young and attractive woman like me really love a middle-aged man like you, Matt? It's laughable. Do you even realize your own worth? Look in the mirror and face reality." Erica burst into mocking laughter. Although Erica's words might be true, her brazen attitude infuriated me. To think such a thing. In response to a shocked Matt, I presented him with 3 documents. The first was the bank transaction history, the second, conclusive evidence photos of the affair, and the third, a divorce form. A divorce form. Wait, are we really getting divorced? Matt was shocked, ignoring the first 2 documents and focusing on the divorce form. Of course. How can I continue married life with a man who wastes his son's allowance? But I didn't intend to get divorced. This situation is a separate issue. Matt mumbled some excuse. I exploded in anger at Matt's ridiculous remarks. "I can't believe this. You have an affair and yet you think we wouldn't get divorced? And how you treated Nick is unforgivable. What kind of parent are you? Did you really think he could live on $3 a month? Nick has been working hard at part-time jobs, scrimping and saving, becoming skin and bones. He couldn't even properly use the heater. You're terrible. Sign the divorce form now. I do feel sorry for Nick." When I heard Erica's mother was sick, and with all her demands, I desperately needed money. Matt weakly tried to justify himself. That's when my father-in-law delivered a powerful blow to Matt. With a short cry of "ah," Matt collapsed, and his father's angry voice boomed. "You stupid son. Sign the divorce form, as Rachel says, right now." Dazed, Matt faced me, and I firmly stated, Of course, I'll be demanding compensation. I'll add up all the money you wasted too. Compensation. You can't be serious. Matt was shocked and exclaimed. And Erica, I will also demand payment of compensation from you, so be prepared. I said that to Erica, and her face turned pale, beginning to panic. Wait a minute. Why should I pay compensation? I can't pay. Why should you pay? Because you were involved in an affair with a married person. I have the right to demand compensation from you, and I will make sure you pay it. When I responded calmly, Erica, glaring at Matt, said, Matt, you have to pay for me too. I don't have any money. I spend all my salary on cosmetics, clothes, and bags. I have no savings. Nonsense. I don't have any money either. You took everything. If you hadn't deceived me, none of this would have happened. You're just a devil, Matt yelled. As the two argued, Matt suddenly turned to me, pleading, Rachel, please, spare me the compensation. I'll agree to the divorce, just drop the compensation claim, please. I really have nothing. Look, we've supported each other until now. Tears streaming down his face, Matt appealed, but I felt only revulsion. My love for Matt had vanished the moment I learned he had been spending Nick's allowance on his affair. If you resist any further, I'll double the compensation. Sign the divorce form now. I'll properly claim the compensation later. I stated resolutely, and Matt, realizing my determination, signed the divorce form. I've signed it. Are you happy now? Matt said in a weak voice, handing over the divorce form. Yes, thank you. Now, please leave immediately. What? Do I have to leave? Matt was surprised. Of course, we're getting divorced. We can't live together anymore. You need to take responsibility. Erica, please leave quickly too. After I sternly expelled Matt and Erica from the house, my in-laws repeatedly apologized for their son's misdeeds. But they were not at fault. I was full of gratitude for my father-in-law, whose efforts uncovered Matt's wrongdoings. After expressing my sincere thanks to my in-laws, I headed to the municipal office and submitted the divorce papers, thereby ending my marriage to Matt. Subsequently, through a lawyer, I made compensation claims against Matt and Erica. Despite their civil servant status, they had been openly dating and there had been rumors of their affair for some time. As a result of the compensation claim, they both became mentally strained, increasing mistakes at work, leading to demotion to less significant positions, and unable to bear the cold treatment from colleagues. Erica chose to resign. Matt, disowned by his parents, is now leading a tough life in a modest apartment, paying compensation to me. Erica, though her parents paid the compensation, had to return to her parents' rural home in exchange. She ended up helping with farm work at home, living a life without freedom under the strict supervision of her parents. I received apologies from Erica's parents over the phone and was informed in detail about Erica's current situation. They said they are keeping a strict watch on her to prevent her from causing any more trouble. For myself, I decided to sell my home and move to a place closer to my son Nick's apartment. Nick and I often meet and keep each other updated about our lives. I informed Nick about the divorce with Matt over the phone on the same day. Nick couldn't believe that Matt had lied about me losing my job and only being able to send $3 a month. When I told him the truth, he was deeply shocked. Could it be a mistake? Dad, who was always so kind, doing something like that? Nick said, his voice trembling. I also felt pained by his reaction. Indeed, Matt had once been kind, a good husband, and father. But everything changed after his affair with Erica began. Looking back at the happy days with my family of 3, my heart still aches, but I know I must not dwell on the past. Moving forward is important. Initially, Nick was deeply shocked, but over time, he gradually regained his cheerfulness. After a few months, he returned to his usual bright self, which relieved me. Time passed, and Nick finally graduated from university and secured a job at a well-known company, marking the end of my role in raising him. I continue to work as a nurse and plan to continue in this profession for as long as my health permits. I still maintain a good relationship with my in-laws, who celebrated Nick's graduation. I intend to continue living a fulfilling life, both in my career and personal life. Having the audacity to act high and mighty over a mere $500 for rent. Wanna try and stop paying? The words that were uttered, and why I'm preparing to move out, you ask? The reason traces back to a few hours ago when my mother-in-law and I had a dispute over the living expenses. Justin is advancing to junior high school and our expenses are increasing, and I heard my sister-in-law has taken up additional part-time jobs. Could you possibly help with contributing a portion of the rent? However, my mother-in-law didn't take my job seriously. She even went as far as to belittle it, saying drawing pictures was merely some sort of playing around. If you don't want to pay, you might as well leave the house. That was the moment I had been waiting for. Finally, the time had come. I quietly stood up, said nothing, and walked to my room. Later, my sister-in-law came in and taunted, "If you're so smart, why not stop the payments then? If that's what they want, I can do that. Sure, I'll stop." And with that, I left the house with a smile. I vowed to clear the resentment of the past 13 years. My name is Gina Manning. At 42, I work from home as a freelance designer. I currently live with my in-laws, have a 13-year-old son, and my husband Robert is stationed abroad. We met in college. Although we were classmates in university and had attended the same high school, we hardly interacted or conversed until we joined the same club in university. The reason was that I had been a student in an integrated course that spans from middle to high school for 6 years, while Robert had joined a regular course upon entering high school. While I was always in A class, Robert was in B class or lower, so we had little to no contact. However, we ended up at the same university and club by chance, and this was the beginning of a friendship. Robert and I got along well, and at 28, we decided to get married. Our life together was modest but peaceful and enjoyable, until suddenly our fate took a different turn. At 29, a year after our marriage, we began living with my in-laws. Reason was due to my father-in-law falling ill and no longer being able to work, requiring care. My mother-in-law was always devoted to household chores, and it seems my sister-in-law, Sarah, was supporting herself with part-time jobs. At that time, Robert earnestly asked for my support, kneeling. "I can't handle this alone. I know it's a burden to you, but please, I need your help." I couldn't refuse such a request. When he proposed, his family warmly welcomed me, and I never felt uncomfortable. Besides, my parents have long passed away. Since my work was based from home and I would be able to continue doing so, I decided to move in with my in-laws. Only later would I realize that this decision was a big mistake. Living with my in-laws turned my daily life into a series of hardships. Robert was living together with us for a few months when suddenly the following conversation came up. "I'm sorry. I've been assigned a long-term business trip. I'll be joining a construction project overseas as an assistant supervisor. I'll return to the US occasionally, but it's unclear when the project will be completed. I'm truly sorry." I was genuinely surprised by this news, but I had anticipated such a possibility before our marriage. Robert works for a company with global operations and had mentioned the possibility of an overseas assignment in his 30s. He had said that if he were assigned overseas, he would likely spend several years abroad. While agreeing to a relationship with marriage in mind and ultimately choosing to live together was not something Robert should apologize for, the timing was unfortunate. There was still a slight distance between me and my in-laws, and I was worried about how well things would go in Robert's absence. Yet, I had no choice but to move on. I made up my mind and saw Robert off, but in his absence, my in-laws finally decided to reveal their true, ugly nature. "Gina, please take care of this." As I was hanging the laundry after washing it, my sister-in-law threw her clothes into the washing machine and started it. It was just childish harassment, forcing me to dry the clothes outside in the cold. Okay, this was how my in-laws treated me. They all mistook me for a mere housekeeper and acted arrogantly. Gina, since you've married into this family, it's only natural that you do these things, right? Why can't you handle such simple tasks? Oh, how I would have loved to see the faces of your parents. My mother-in-law said that, despite knowing that my parents had passed away early due to illness. Not long after, my father-in-law's health deteriorated due to excessive drinking, leading to him falling over and injuring his lower limbs, making him unable to move and thus needing care. And yet, he continued to make excessive remarks. Hey, the beer bottle is empty. Such a rude woman is nothing but trouble. A daughter-in-law should just hurry up and go to the liquor store to buy some beer. Why don't you show some consideration for me, who can't walk? He slammed the empty beer bottle on the table while yelling at me. This has become a daily routine. The face my in-laws showed me until now was all an act. From the beginning, they deceived us by putting on a good face during the marriage, only to use me as a convenient housekeeper. Robert was also a victim, deceived by them. While I thought of contacting Robert numerous times, my hands stopped as I was about to dial his number. Robert is currently abroad, engaged in important work. I ended up not being able to contact him due to mixed feelings of wanting to share my struggles and not wanting to be a bother. I believe that if I didn't react strongly to my in-laws' harassment, they would eventually get tired and stop. However, they were unexpectedly persistent and did not change their merciless attitude. When I served them food, it was criticized as tasteless. Leftovers were immediately thrown away, and I ended up having to clean up the mess. When I ironed clothes and a tiny wrinkle was left, I'd have to endure a lengthy and pointless scolding. After enduring this for a month, I couldn't take it anymore and with trembling hands decided to contact Robert. Robert, help. I'm at my limit. I can't bear the treatment from your mother and the others every day. Hearing my SOS, Robert was initially shaken but then regained his composure and replied, I understand. I didn't know you were going through such hardships. I can't continue my work like this. It might be difficult to return home immediately, but I'll consult my boss to see if there's a chance to return within a month. I'm sorry. Even though it was my idea to live together, but here I am at an overseas post. Just knowing that Robert was on my side lightened my heart a little. But even after revealing my situation to Robert, the harassment from my in-laws didn't stop. So, you cried to Robert? He contacted me and told us to stop the terrible treatment towards you. Really, making us out to be the bad guys? What an ungrateful woman. There was still a considerable amount of time before Robert would return. Nevertheless, Robert tried to help me by contacting his mother and pointing out various things. But this attempt provoked them even more. Scolded by her beloved son, my mother-in-law got offended, and unfortunately, her anger was directed at me. Did she think I wouldn't tell Robert about it? I can proudly assert that my anger and sadness are justified. I love Robert and want to care for his family as if they were my own. I chose to live with them with such feelings, not expecting the hardships that awaited. My mother-in-law constantly nags me, my sister-in-law keeps being mean to me, and my father-in-law uses coarse language, drinks alcohol despite being forbidden by doctors, and forces me to buy him alcohol and snacks. Besides, my in-laws seem to be misunderstanding something. Even I have a part-time job, it's pathetic that you just stay at home and rely on Robert. My sister-in-law blurted out to me. They are under the impression that I'm not working. Although remote work is gradually becoming recognized nowadays, my in-laws' conception of it is far from my actual situation. Typically, salaried workers doing remote work report their start of work and have regular online meetings. However, as a freelancer managing my own business, I work at my own pace, often taking breaks when I'm not feeling up to it and trying to maintain my mental health. This way of working is not at all uncommon, and a friend of mine who is a freelance writer also spends her days in a similar manner. However, it seems that my sister-in-law thinks I am just lazing around. She claims to be working part-time, but in reality, she only works 4 hours a week and heads straight home. She's not contributing to the household finances, and I've seen her receiving pocket money from her father. It's clear who should be more ashamed, but I've kept silent to avoid trouble. Despite such treatment, there's a reason I haven't left this place. I am pregnant. A month had passed since that call, and Robert had finally returned home. Upon his arrival, he gathered his mother and the others in the living room to talk, but they seemed not to take him seriously, letting the conversation slide as if nothing had happened. They probably anticipated that Robert would go abroad again. If they endured this period, the meddling Robert would leave and they would have their chance to exploit me freely again. To my in-laws, Robert seemed to be nothing more than a source of money or the bringer of a convenient daughter-in-law. Seeing my loved one being belittled hurt me, but I decided to remain silent for the time being. After being scolded by Robert, my sister-in-law grumbled with a displeased expression. And what about a husband who stays overseas, leaving his pregnant wife behind? After hearing that, Robert turned to me with a surprised look. Sorry I kept silent. I've been feeling unexplainably unwell since you left. I found out I'm pregnant just recently after getting examined at the hospital. I ran into your sister by chance when I was leaving the clinic in front of the station. I didn't want my in-laws to know about the pregnancy. While I was overjoyed about the pregnancy, revealing this situation would surely make Robert worry and possibly hasten his return plans. He had already been allowed to return unexpectedly. I couldn't further hinder his career by imposing more demands. I intended to keep quiet until Robert returned. But I didn't think I'd run into my sister-in-law. Seeing me leaving the clinic, my sister-in-law approached with a smirk, saying, "Congratulations. Since my brother is the eldest son, obviously he'll be the one to inherit the house. I'll make sure to tell this news to both Mom and Dad." By the end of the day, the fact that I was pregnant had reached my in-laws' ears. Nothing changed because of it. The days of being burdened with household chores continued as usual. Hearing this, Robert became even angrier, but until the day he left again, they showed no sign of remorse. I can't leave Gina in a place like this. Robert suggested that we move elsewhere. However, I carefully refused his proposal. I appreciate the offer and it's probably the best option. But I can't take this anymore. After all that, I don't just want to run away. I'm sorry for making you worried, but please bear with it a little longer. Robert opposed, of course, but my determination was unshakable. That feeling had taken root deep within me. After Robert returned to his work overseas, I decided to outwardly comply with my in-laws. When they learned that the baby was a boy, the grandparents, who had hoped for a male heir, became slightly kinder. But the insults towards me continued. My sister-in-law seemed displeased with the change. Just because she's pregnant, you shouldn't be too soft on her. Just let her carry the heavy things. While saying this, my sister-in-law pointed to a large box ordered online by my mother-in-law. However, my mother-in-law said with a gentle smile, "That child is indeed Robert's, right? He's a boy and an important heir, so it's fine for now. Once the baby is born, we'll have her do the chores again. Haha." Hearing this, my sister-in-law laughed contentedly. Truly a family with rotten cores. Despite feeling this way, I held a strong determination not to be defeated and successfully gave birth to a healthy baby boy after overcoming the pregnancy period. But without a moment's rest, busy days began, and in the blink of an eye, 13 years had passed. I was 42 years old, and my son, Justin, had just become a 13-year-old middle school student. Robert had been coming back to the US occasionally, but recently it was finally decided that he would return to the US for good after completing his assignment. At last, I decided to put into action the plan I had been cooking up for years. As I was preparing to leave the house by packing my things, I was approached from behind. Turning around, I saw my mother and sister-in-law still wearing their disdainful smiles, looking down on me. Out of nowhere, they uttered these words, having the audacity to act high and mighty over a mere $500 for rent. Want to try and refuse the payment? Why they said this and why I am now preparing to leave the house trace back to a few hours earlier, when my mother-in-law and I had a disagreement over rent. Justin has started middle school, and our expenses have increased. I heard that Sarah also started working more part-time jobs. Could you help by contributing a portion of the rent? Justin is my son's name. Then my mother-in-law got angry, dismissing my concerns over such a trivial amount. Even though the rent is only $500 a month, you can't even pay that? How much of Robert's income are you trying to claim for yourself? Spending your days drying on the computer and playing, what a comfortable life you must lead. If you don't want to pay, then feel free to leave. This reaction was precisely what I was waiting for. In fact, I had been steering the situation to this outcome. Without reacting to my mother-in-law's provocation, I quietly stood up and walked to my room without saying a word. Over the past 13 years, I had gradually reduced my possessions so I could leave quickly when the time came. My belongings were already minimal, fitting easily into a large suitcase. In the midst of this, perhaps having heard from my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law appeared and provocatively said, "Then try and stop paying. If that's what they want, I can do that. Sure, I'll stop." With those words and a smile on my face, I left the house. I vowed to myself to settle the grievances accumulated over these 13 years. I headed to the short-stay apartment I had arranged in advance. I had discussed this plan with Justin beforehand. He came to the short-stay apartment without hesitation and started his homework without asking any questions, which made me laugh. Perhaps this adaptability was inherited from his father, Robert, who is accustomed to living abroad. With that thought, I moved on to my next action. As my sister-in-law provocatively suggested, I contacted each service provider to stop all payments for essential services, including electricity and water. Learning that the services would be unavailable from the next day, I quietly celebrated this small victory. Unknown to my in-laws, I had been covering all the utility expenses for the house. The contracts were in my name. Initially, Robert was paying those bills, but when he went abroad, we were suggested to change the contracts to the name of the person living in the house. Since I would be living there for an extended period of time and had my own income to cover the payments without any issue, I requested to have all the contracts transferred to my name. Thus, while they thought the cessation of rent payment was minor, they did not anticipate the discontinuation of electricity and water usage. They were under the illusion that all payments were being made by Robert, who was abroad. But when my sister-in-law explicitly challenged me to try to stop the payments, I complied with her request and halted all payments. I looked forward to the next day. With that thought, I went to bed and fell into a deep, restful sleep, feeling liberated. I couldn't recall the last time I had such a peaceful rest throughout the long 13 years, sleeping through the night without awakening. The next morning, after sending Justin to school, I was working from home when, as expected, I received a call from my mother-in-law. "What's going on? Both electricity and water have been cut off. You told Robert again, didn't you? Harassing us with such a cowardly method. Aren't you ashamed?" In contrast to her shouting, I responded calmly. "Didn't you say it yourselves to try and stop the payments? Were you even aware that I was the one covering all the utility bills for the house? I was just following your instructions, so why should I be blamed?" This left my mother-in-law speechless. She must not have imagined that all the payments were under my name. Of course, the cessation wasn't limited to just electricity and water but included other services as well. I had already contacted the gas company, and since I was no longer using the residence, I requested that they bill the in-laws living there for the rent. They should be receiving a call from the real estate agent soon. Then, over the phone, I heard my father-in-law's panicked voice. The real estate agent contacted us about the next rent payment. Now we have to deal with the rent issue too. On top of the electricity and water being cut off, has Robert done something else? Hearing my father-in-law's agitation made me smile involuntarily. Well, yes, everyone had belittled my job as just playing around drawing. After a moment of silence, my mother-in-law finally spoke. Even if you were the one making all the payments, that must have been Robert's salary. No? Humph, you're not in any position to talk. Really, troublesome women are such a bother. Her words infuriated me. I have been working consistently, not just relying on Robert. It might be time to reveal my truth to my ignorant mother-in-law. I actually earn my income through illustration and web design work. My annual income exceeds $100,000. If that's considered low, then you must be quite remarkable, I stated. At that moment, I could sense my mother-in-law gasping. She probably couldn't have fathomed this. The daughter-in-law she always scorned and assumed to be idle living had an annual income of $100,000. Wait, do you really think I'd fall for such a story? To my still skeptical mother-in-law, I disclosed the name of my company, suggesting she look it up. My sister-in-law, who was listening via speakerphone, seemed to have looked it up and exclaimed in astonishment, "Wait, really? Gina Manning is listed as the CEO. Why did you hide such crucial information?" I wasn't hiding it. From the beginning, they just misunderstood me as unemployed. They looked down on me without knowing that I was supporting their livelihood. I endured 13 years because Robert and Justin were with me. I could have fled, but that would only result in more contempt from the in-laws, adding to the humiliation. So, I silently waited for Robert's return, planning a grand retaliation to end it all once he was back. The strategy was to sign a contract with a temporary residence and move there as soon as Robert's return was confirmed. I could have chosen to directly stop the power supply, but then they would claim that I was enjoying trapping others by holding the financial power. Knowing their nature to make such shameless claims, I decided to turn the tables. They publicly instructed me to stop the payments. Once that scenario was set, I could actually stop the services without being blamed, forcing them to regret their own words. While pondering how to bring about this situation, they provocatively said, "Stop the payment and show us," making things much easier for me than expected. I can't forget Sarah's confident face as she uttered those words. Rather than feeling hurt, I was somewhat looking forward to the upcoming events. When the in-laws realized their mistake, they began to desperately cover it up. So that was the case. We had no idea. You thought of us and didn't say anything. If you had told us about the actual expenses, we would have treated you differently. My anger surged again. What they meant was, if I had been a housewife with no income, their treatment would have been justified. That's unacceptable. Without an apology and making irrelevant excuses to protect their pride, my anger towards my mother-in-law only grew. No need for such excuses. As Sarah suggested, I have stopped all payments. Moreover, I have no intention of returning to you. Robert, Justin, and I will start a new life. I can no longer be within laws that fail to understand, so please handle things on your own from now on. With that, I ended the call. Despite receiving multiple calls from my in-laws, I felt no inclination to respond and blocked them. The constant ringing of the phone ceased, and the silence that followed was immensely liberating. All that was left was to await Robert's return and plan our next steps. I looked forward to that time while enjoying a moment of peace. Finally, the moment arrived, and Robert returned. His skin, darkened from working outdoors, contrasted with his bright white smile, though his eyes were sharp. "Sorry for the long wait." "Let's go," Robert said. I nodded immediately, and we drove towards the in-laws' house. Upon ringing the doorbell, my mother-in-law appeared with a vacant expression. Her skin was rough, her hair unkempt, and her roots were visibly untreated, indicating a long absence from the salon. When I was providing financial support, she lived comfortably, but now, without a job, she depended on her daughter, who was a part-time worker. This was exactly what I had intended. People accustomed to living on someone else's dime don't easily adjust their sense of money. For my in-laws, who had been comfortable for 13 years, this new reality must have been painful. Gradually, my mother-in-law raised her head and looked at us intently. At that moment, it seemed as if a light returned to her eyes as she stared at us. I asked her why she was in such a state. Suddenly, she erupted in anger. "It's all your fault. You kept earning quietly, deceiving us, didn't you? How insolent. Ever since you left, our income stopped and the expenses soared, with me having to take care of father. Sarah is just loafing around, useless. Why do we have such ungrateful children? It's infuriating." She refused to admit her failures, maintaining her stubbornness. Her pride was indeed like a high mountain. As I harbored these thoughts, Robert quickly countered. "Let me return those words to you. It's your belief that serving parents is a child's duty that's wrong." I repeatedly pointed out Sarah's choice to be a part-time worker, didn't I? But every time you and father dismissed it, saying a woman just needs to marry. This led to a person who, even past 40, can secure a stable job and lazes around at home. At Robert's rebuttal, my mother-in-law was speechless, merely trembling and unable to respond. She was skilled at deflecting blame onto others, always scheming how to escape criticism. Seeing my sister-in-law behave this way, it felt like the apple didn't fall far from the tree. The argument at the doorstep lasted a while until my mother-in-law's phone rang. After smacking her lips, she checked the display when her face became pale. The call seemed to be from the police. Sarah was caught dining and dashing and is now in police custody. They want someone to pick her up. What on earth is she doing? Currently, only the parents were home, as my sister-in-law had gone out with a friend. She intended to dine at her friend's expense, who had suggested to meet up after a long time. Unaware of my sister-in-law's part-time work situation, the friend expected to split the bill after the meal, which enraged my sister-in-law. She insisted that the one who suggested to meet up should pay. However, it doesn't work like that. Isn't it a basic responsibility of an adult to pay for what you've consumed? They didn't share their meal. My sister-in-law ordered expensive dishes and premium wines, expecting others to cover the cost. Why should anyone else bear that expense? Despite it being her fault, she feigned ignorance and left the restaurant without paying. Caught by the owner, she was promptly reported to the police. Robert and I could only exchange wry smiles at this terrible outcome. My mother-in-law trembled at the amount my sister-in-law had racked up. Drinking wine worth several hundreds of dollars at an Italian restaurant in the afternoon and the total bill exceeding $400? Unbelievable, we don't have that kind of money. For them, $400 was a significant amount. In response to my mother-in-law's pleading gaze, I smirked and firmly stated, "I won't pay." That single sentence completely defeated her, causing her to crumble to the floor. Upon our arrival at the scene, we discovered that my sister-in-law's acquaintance had temporarily covered the bill, and the police had left. Naturally, this friend was now demanding reimbursement from my mother-in-law for my sister-in-law's share. Although I had anticipated some trouble, my mother-in-law quickly withdrew cash from a nearby ATM and handed it directly to my sister-in-law's acquaintance. While I was surprised at how readily she paid, Robert discreetly shared the background story. That person is the daughter of the owner of the company where our father used to work. Sarah only had a handful of close friends, and if you're talking about a middle school classmate, that would be her. She's quite well known locally, and it seems the decision to comply was influenced by the fear of damaging our family's reputation. Looking at my mother-in-law again, I saw her repeatedly apologizing to my sister-in-law's friend in a pitiful manner. My sister-in-law's acquaintance offered a word of advice and then left, swishing her long hair. It was clear that my mother-in-law's attitude, born out of fear for the family's reputation, might cause my sister-in-law's few remaining friends to distance themselves. My sister-in-law, having been scolded by the shop owner, appeared before us and was shocked to see us. "Why are you here?" she exclaimed, covering her face and starting to cry. Her disheveled appearance, a stark contrast to her past focus on beauty, must have been an embarrassing moment for her. Witnessing my sister-in-law, who once looked down on me, fall so low brought a sense of relief to me. Robert seemed to share this sentiment, giving her a cold look. Overwhelmed by his gaze, my sister-in-law eventually broke down crying, unconcerned with the onlookers. Yet, I felt skeptical about her crying. After all, she had just attempted to evade paying for her meal and then had her mother settle it instead. My sister-in-law had always been conscious of others' opinions, especially about her appearance, spending her income not on the household but on dubious supplements and odd mirrors from shady salons, resulting in wasteful expenses. Ultimately realizing their mistakes, both my mother and sister-in-law apologized and kneeled in front of us. "We're sorry, it was our fault. We won't harass Jean again. Please come back." Their plea was sincere. For my prideful mother-in-law to kneel for an apology, the situation must truly have been dire. However, my sister-in-law stubbornly refused to apologize, maintaining her stance. "I'm not at fault. I won't give in like my mother, so I definitely won't apologize." It was neither I nor Robert who showed anger at these words, but my mother-in-law herself. "I've had enough. Don't ever come back to this house. With this $400, our ties are severed. If you had worked properly or gotten married, this wouldn't have happened." In a fit of rage, my mother-in-law lashed out at my sister-in-law. Having always been pampered, my sister-in-law was stunned to receive such harsh words from her mother, leaving her frozen. The cracks within the family ultimately got exposed, revealing the fragility of their bonds. A family should support each other, but they were too self-centered, always blaming others for their problems. It was a very embarrassing and pitiful end to a ludicrous drama. "Your words are like a boomerang, mother-in-law. If there had been no bullying towards me from the start, it wouldn't have come to this. If you and father had guided Sarah on the right path, this outcome could have been avoided, don't you think? Reality cannot be changed, so you'll just have to accept it." With my statement, both remained silent. Choosing silence was probably wise, as they had nothing to offer but complaints and apologies. Endless hardships await them. I endured it for 13 years, but I couldn't have done it without a supportive family. I can't imagine them living without a strong bond and cooperating with each other in the future. They are doomed to wander in perpetual adversity. The struggles they face may seem minor compared to the pain and humiliation I endured. Hopefully, their future hardships will make them realize their foolishness. My mother-in-law has apparently started a part-time job out of financial necessity. However, past deeds aren't easily undone. My father-in-law fell again. The reason was clear. He continued to consume alcohol despite the doctor's warnings. The result of continuously purchasing cheap alcohol was a deterioration to his health, leading to a long-term hospital stay. As my father-in-law complained about the bland hospital food, my mother-in-law had a myriad of other concerns and was extremely anxious. She had hoped that he would stay at home and rest, given his inability to work due to his leg condition. However, the medical expenses for his surgery and hospitalization heavily burdened the family's finances. Angry, my mother-in-law used up all the savings my father-in-law had hidden. Discovering this, my father-in-law was furious, leading to an argument that ended with scolding from the neighboring patients in the hospital room. My father-in-law is currently leading a quiet hospital life, spending his days feeling deprived of his freedom. My mother-in-law, working tirelessly to cover medical and living expenses, was dedicated to supporting the family. Despite her iron will, enduring it day after day, the accumulated fatigue led to her collapsing from overwork, ironically resulting in her being hospitalized too. Occasionally, there are requests for visits from her grandson, but it's hard to imagine Justin genuinely loving a grandmother who has continuously harassed his mother since he was little. Therefore, Justin chose to cut off relations with his grandmother, a decision that deeply wounded my mother-in-law, knocking her out completely. As for my sister-in-law, after being expelled from the house, her life grew even more challenging. She was caught stealing money at her part-time job, leading to her arrest. Far from showing remorse, she defiantly claimed, "I stole because I needed the money," leading to further problems. The amount she stole was substantial, and her repeated offenses came to light, ultimately resulting in a prison sentence. We couldn't help but offer a wry smile at this typical ending for my sister-in-law, hoping that one day she would regret her actions. Our family has purchased a high-rise apartment and started a new life. Even with our affluence, we strive to live humbly and peacefully, learning from the mistakes of my in-laws and avoiding being arrogant. While I'm not good at physical activities, my son Justin shows remarkable talent in fencing, competing in national tournaments and attending a prestigious school for it, enjoying a fulfilling high school life. Someday, I might find myself in my mother-in-law's position when Justin brings home a bride. When that time comes, I aspire to be a kind and supportive mother-in-law, never interfering unnecessarily but always ready to offer needed help, holding this as my heartfelt wish. Are my dad and mom's move finished? Ben decided on his own that we would live together without consulting me, and he didn't help at all. He never seems to want to listen to my opinion. He proceeds with things based on his own ideas and acts on his own. Even now, he only asked about the situation over the phone, but I don't even know where he is. I had been disappointed in Ben before, but it was thanks to that person that I finally made up my mind. Yes, it's all finished. I just moved into a high-rise condo myself. What? While hearing his surprised voice, I laughed with my son, Aaron, who was next to me. He had left everything up to me, so he hadn't noticed anything. What do you mean with a high-rise condo? A high-rise condo means just that. A high-rise condo. With that, I ended the call. The next day, Ben contacted me. Apparently, he had ended a trip with his beloved parents in the middle to come and see our house. There's nothing here. Where is the luggage? Where could it be? What do you mean, where could it be? For details, please ask that person directly. After saying that, I heard a voice of anger from the other end of the phone. I, Cindy, am a 57-year-old housewife. When I was younger, I worked in sales, where I was a top performer and secured many contracts, so I was relied upon in my department. However, I quit because Ben, who was once my boss and trainer, asked me to. After many talks and discussions we had together, Ben confessed as we were close in age, and after several years of dating, we got married. He asked me to quit my job and dedicate myself to the family, promising that he would never let me struggle, so I resigned upon marrying despite having many regrets. After that, at the age of 33, I gave birth to our son, Aaron, and it felt like I was leading a happy family life. Ben doted on Aaron very much, sometimes to the point of spoiling him, which often exasperated me. On the other hand, I didn't have a good relationship with my in-laws. Especially with my mother-in-law, Diane, with whom I often disagreed about how to raise Aaron, resulting in a strained relationship. It was around this time that Aaron went to university, became independent, and started living alone. Ben reluctantly agreed on the condition that he would visit regularly. After that, it was just the two of us. But Ben started diverting the money he used to spend on Aaron to his own parents. While there was nothing wrong with that, the continued purchase of luxury goods, trips, and gourmet food continued. Aaron didn't need them, so there was no problem. But my mother-in-law, who would take anything she could get, started to affect our finances. Ben, where is the $1,000 I left here? I used it because Mom said she needed a wallet. What are you talking about? I told you not to touch it because it's for the rent. Shut up. It's my money that I earned. What's wrong with spending it as I like? A mere housewife like you shouldn't complain to the head of the house. Whenever I say anything about money, Ben raises his voice in objection. Housewife. That's a term Ben often brings up during our arguments. You're the one who asked me to become a housewife. You being unemployed is a fact. If you can't earn, don't complain. If you hate me being unemployed, I'll go out and get a part-time job. Hey, don't joke around. If I allow my wife to work outside, I'll be seen as incompetent. There are still people with such views today. Ben, unnecessarily proud, wouldn't accept me working outside. When I started working secretly, he found out through his mother where I was working and came yelling at me. In such circumstances, I couldn't even take up a part-time job, so I had no choice but to start working from home. Initially, the income was modest, but it gradually increased, and I was able to manage by using the money for living expenses. Honestly, if the income continues to increase, I might consider divorcing Ben. One day, when I was working from home, the doorbell suddenly rang. I wasn't expecting any visitors, but thinking it might be a delivery, I opened the door to find my mother-in-law standing there. Hi, is something wrong? Nothing's wrong, you shut in. She yelled as barged into the house. Again, this word shut in filled me with disgust. When I was working, my mother-in-law had told me to quit and become a housewife. But once I actually retired upon marriage, she started blaming me like this. Ben is earning money, and that's how you can live. Yet, you dared to defy your husband. She would not listen to me at all and kept attacking me until she was satisfied. Just when I thought I couldn't concentrate on work because of this situation. Diane, how many times do I need to say it? Stop bothering Cindy. Darling. Cindy, I'm sorry that Diane is bothering you again. My father-in-law, Henry, had come to take my mother-in-law home. He has always been rational, and ever since he retired, he has been gardening while also keeping my overly assertive mother-in-law in check. He had returned from gardening today and, noticing my mother-in-law was missing, came over worried. I had received his help many times. When will I see my grandchild? My mother-in-law once asked. If you keep pressuring Cindy like that, she'll feel even less like having children. He had defended me when I was struggling with fertility issues and alleviated the pressure from my mother-in-law. And after Aaron was born, when my mother-in-law tried to take him from me, this child is a precious heir. I will raise him. Please give Aaron back. Then saying enough, my father-in-law rescued Aaron from her hands. He also scrapped the cohabitation plan that had been proposed at the time when he saw that my mother-in-law might become too intrusive. Ben had sided with his mother and wanted to live together, but thanks to my father-in-law firmly saying, "You're the husband. Put your wife and child first," we were able to avoid cohabitation. If I had lived with my mother-in-law, I might not have endured her mistreatment. I am very grateful to my father-in-law. Thanks to him, I've been able to maintain a reasonable distance from my in-laws. Amidst being frustrated with life with Ben, I suddenly received news that my mother had passed away. She had a chronic illness, and my sister had been caring for her. My father passed away early, and my mother hadn't touched the assets he left, resulting in a considerable inheritance for my sister and me. What will you do about your parents' home? Ben asked me. My sister has her own home, so she said she'd give it to me if I want it. How about moving to your parents' home then? He suggested while we were sorting out the inheritance. We currently live in a rented house, but my parents' home is quite old. Yes, how about moving after renovating it? I suggested. How will you fund the renovations? Ben asked. I'll use the inheritance, I replied. I haven't told Ben the specific amount of the inheritance. If he knew there was a large amount, he might give it to his mother. That's why I've only told him about the renovation costs. That shouldn't be a problem then, Ben agreed. I felt relieved inside. Moving to my parents' home would mean being long distance from my in-laws. That means I could also keep a distance from the problematic mother-in-law. With that in mind, I began actively preparing to move. The renovations were eventually completed, and I moved to my parents' home. What's this? I thought, because there were more boxes than expected. The moving company handled it, but I was surprised by the amount. While having my suspicions, I opened a box of unrecognizable luggage and found my mother-in-law's clothes inside. Ben, there's a box here packed with your mother's clothes. What's this all about? I asked. Did I forget to tell you? My parents and I are going to live in this house together. What? I was astonished. I was dumbfounded by this sudden announcement. Why do we need to live with my in-laws in my parents' house? I couldn't help but argue with Ben. I didn't hear anything about this. The renovation using the inheritance was meant for us to live together. Shut up. I've already decided. Ben raised his voice and pulled out a document. Holding the document, I was shocked. A divorce paper? If you oppose it, it's divorce. How will you live if you leave me, an unemployed woman? Ben said. The divorce paper already had Ben's signature on it. While I stood there stunned, Ben started packing his travel bag with clothes. Pack up the luggage and prepare for my parents' move by the time I get back. Wait, where are you going? I asked. I'm going on a little trip. I sold my parents' house, so I'll use that money. I'll stay at my parents' house for 2 or 3 days, then go on a luxurious trip for a week. Ben answered and left. I was left feeling the worst. The cohabitation was decided without my consent. He left the bothersome task of sorting things to me, and he went on a trip with his parents. At that moment, I decided to retaliate thoroughly. During the preparations to move, I spread the insecticide I had stored throughout the house and left. I am very averse to insects, and although I knew the renovated house was safe, I had bought the insecticide just in case. As I looked at the divorce paper in my hand, the phone suddenly rang. That call led me to make a significant decision. Aaron, it's been a while. Mom, what's up? I contacted Aaron and received some help from him. 3 hours later, an unwelcome call from my mother-in-law came. You made me go through something terrible. What? It turned out that my mother-in-law had borrowed a spare key from Ben and entered the house without permission, just after I had spread the insecticide. And she almost fell from breathing in the air. She threatened at the end, I'll sue you. I felt it was karma. It's a far bigger issue to enter someone's house without permission. I retorted and hung up the phone. Since she's still lively enough to complain over the phone, she must be fine despite inhaling the insecticide. Thinking about cutting ties with such a family made me feel relieved. And a week later, when everything had settled, Ben, who hadn't contacted me at all, reached out. Are my dad and mom's move finished? Ben decided on his own that we would live together without consulting me, and he didn't help at all. He never seems to want to listen to my opinion. He proceeds with things based on his own ideas and acts on his own. Even now, he only asked about the situation over the phone, but I don't even know where he is. I had been disappointed in Ben before, but it was thanks to that person that I finally made up my mind. Yes, it's all finished. I just moved into a high-rise condo myself. War. While hearing his surprised voice, I laughed with my son, Aaron, who was next to me. He had left everything up to me, so he hadn't noticed anything. What do you mean with a high-rise condo? A high-rise condo means just that. A high-rise condo. With that, I ended the call. Finally, I was able to cut ties with Ben. My gratitude for the people who cooperated with Aaron was immeasurable. Thinking back, I headed to the sparkling new kitchen to prepare a special meal for Aaron. That day, when I told Aaron everything over the phone, he came to help right away. It's good you could come, but is work okay? No problem. I explained the situation, and they told me to go right away. Aaron works in real estate, and his company was started by a college senior. Since he had helped since his student days, it seems they understood immediately when he explained the situation. Mom, I need you to finish the contract today or tomorrow. I understand. So, I completed the necessary procedures, and I was able to move into the new high-rise condo. Today, as I was preparing for the celebration, Ben contacted me. Just imagining the reaction of my selfish husband and meddling mother-in-law when they visit the new home excites me. Hey, what's this? The next day, Ben contacted me. Apparently, he had ended a trip with his beloved parents in the middle to come and see our house. There's nothing here. Where is the luggage? Where could it be? What do you mean, where could it be? For details, Please ask that person directly. After saying that, I could hear a voice of anger from the other end of the phone. Enough with the jokes. Ben let out a small scream. Hearing that voice and trying to suppress my laughter, Aaron appeared. Cindy, I'm sorry for the trouble my family has caused. Soon after, I heard my father-in-law's voice from the other end of the phone. They seemed to be on speaker, and I could faintly hear Ben and my mother-in-law's voices as well. It's okay. You supported me. What's that? Explain. I sent your luggage to another location. The day Ben left the house, it was my father-in-law who contacted me. He first apologized for not being able to stop the unilateral actions of Ben and my mother-in-law. Then he said he would handle them and decided to send their luggage to the specified address. Thanks to the movers arranged by my father-in-law, the luggage transfer went smoothly. So, what will happen to this house? After explaining everything, I heard Ben's voice of confusion. I sold that house. What? You sold it? Why would you do something like that on your own? That house was inherited by me. My sister didn't want it, so she agreed it was okay to sell, and I decided to sell it. What's the problem? The house was well located and had been beautifully renovated, so it quickly found a buyer. In fact, Aaron Sr. liked it and immediately offered to buy it. As a result, the house was already owned by its new owner. Isn't that a bit too selfish? Ben, which mouth of yours can say such things? It was you who decided everything without listening to Cindy's opinion. Now I will show you where you two will live. Wait a moment. What do you mean by you two? I've had enough of Diane. Hopefully, this way you'll understand. In the calm yet stern voice of my father-in-law, I could sense my mother-in-law's surprise. She was probably under my father-in-law's sharp gaze. Dad and Grandma, you're underestimating Mom too much. At that moment, Aaron, standing next to me, said as calmly as my father-in-law, I've heard everything from Mom. Why should my mom, who renovated the house after receiving it from Grandma and Auntie, have to give it to you guys? Dad, you must know how Grandma has been treating Mom. Despite that, why would you consider living together? Aaron, that's no way to speak to your father. Father? Just giving orders and expecting obedience. Is that what a father does? You ignored Mom's opinions, and sometimes mine too, didn't you? Honestly, I don't want to be a father like you, and I don't want my loved ones to meet people like Grandma. The direct words from Aaron, whom they had doted on, left them speechless. After that, I could hear my father-in-law sighing on the other end of the phone. I'm truly sorry, Cindy, he said, and then he ended the call. Just before the call ended, I heard surprised voices from Ben and my mother-in-law. With that, my father-in-law will probably handle those two. By the way, this high-rise condo is really wonderful, isn't it? Yes, I was hoping I could live here someday. The purchase of this high-rise condo was smoothly financed with the money from selling the house, my savings from when I was single, and the remaining inheritance. It looks like I will be able to live off the income from my work-at-home job. It seems like we'll have peaceful days ahead for a while. You know, I actually valued Mom over Dad because you taught me proper things, even though you were strict. According to Aaron, while Ben would buy him anything he wanted, he seldom provided strict guidance and rarely listened to him. Even when he talked about school, Ben would just say I see and not engage seriously, always suggesting, let's go shopping next holiday, only wanting to go where he wanted. More than Ben, it was important for me to listen carefully, sometimes scold him, and seriously consider his future. It's true that since Aaron got through his rebellious phase, he occasionally gave Ben cold looks. Also, I remember when Ben was criticizing me, Aaron would intervene as if to protect me, saying, that can wait. We have something important to discuss now. Children are more sensitive to their parents' actions than we might think. Every time Dad said something to you, Mom, he would insult you for being unemployed. So, I decided to send money to help you. Huh? I hadn't heard about that. I heard it from Grandpa. Apparently, all the money I sent ended up going to Grandma. My father-in-law had long suspected my mother-in-law's extravagant lifestyle. Indeed, Ben was sending her travel vouchers and gourmet food, but that wasn't all. Aside from that, my mother-in-law was frequently enjoying luxury lunches and shopping. The gifts Ben sent every month couldn't possibly explain it all. Despite this, the shared savings remained untouched. Turns out that all the remittances from Aaron were being taken by Ben and passed directly to my mother-in-law. I can't believe it. Knowing that, I've decided I don't want anything more to do with Dad. Aaron's expression was stern, clearly indicating his resolve. He seemed to be at the peak of his anger. I no longer intend to support Dad, and Grandpa said he's going to divorce Grandma. That's right. As Aaron said, my father-in-law proceeded with the divorce from my mother-in-law afterward. My mother-in-law tried to cling to my father-in-law, but he was fed up with her and Ben's self-centered actions and coldly pushed them away. I'll split the assets, but don't expect any inheritance. My father-in-law stated decisively, deciding to spend all his available funds and move into a facility. Due to my mother-in-law's wastefulness, there wasn't much inheritance left in the first place. Afterward, my father-in-law moved into the facility, letting go of my mother-in-law and Ben. As I was finally enjoying some peaceful days, I got another call from Ben. "Hey, it's me, Ben. I know. What do you want?" It's really tough, really. Reluctantly listening to him, the wasteful spending by my mother-in-law continued as usual. Ben had used up all the money he earned, and now they were even dipping into their living expenses. Previously, I supported the household with the money I earned, and we had remittances from Aaron, but now that these were gone, they were in a difficult situation. "You're my wife, aren't you? Help me." "No, I'm not your wife anymore." What?" The divorce papers I received that day were promptly filled out and submitted by me. That means our marital relationship had already ended long ago. Unbelievable. Why did you submit it that day? You were the one who wrote it and brought it to me, right? I just followed through and submitted it. There shouldn't be any problem. Ben was at a loss for words upon hearing my response. He probably didn't anticipate that his own actions would backfire on him. "So, can't we start over?" "What? No way. I've finally become free from you. There's no reason to go back." As I responded coldly, there was a noise on the other end of the phone. "It's me, Cindy." "What is it, Diane?" It seemed like my mother-in-law had picked up the phone. I felt a strong aversion inside me upon hearing her contrived, sweet voice. "I'm really sorry for being cold to you. So, do you remember how much I suffered? You tried to make me quit my job even before we were married, blamed me for not being able to have children, and tried to take Aaron away from me. If it weren't for my father-in-law helping, things would have been much worse. If you were in the same situation, do you think you could forgive me?" My mother-in-law kept silent after my question. I will never forget nor forgive the treatment I received from her. And I have no intention to forgive Ben either. While you two were happily traveling, I was being ignored, wasn't I? From now on, please enjoy your wonderful lives. Goodbye. After declaring that, I hung up the phone, blocked his number, and cut off all ties with Ben and his family. Afterward, I heard that Ben and my mother-in-law were reluctantly living in a cheap apartment provided by my father-in-law. Ben had spent so much on his mother that there was hardly any savings left. He had a decent income, so he initially planned to save a bit before moving out. My mother-in-law tried to start housekeeping but was unable to curb her spending habits and do housekeeping, since she had been away from domestic chores for years, thanks to my father-in-law who had retired and taken over the household duties. While she was unaccustomed to housework, she fell and broke her leg, necessitating care. Overwhelmed with caregiving and housework, Ben accumulated fatigue, which led to mistakes at work, resulting in an irrevocable error that eventually forced him to resign. That's why he contacted me for help. Aaron visited and reported on Ben's plight, but he declined to help him. He should have at least saved the money I sent. Indeed, but regretting it now won't help. Meanwhile, my life was progressing smoothly. Thanks to Aaron and his friends recommending me, my client base for home-based work has increased, significantly improving my income. Aaron, who used to barely visit when Ben was around, now comes by frequently, and although he offers to send money, I decline as I'm not struggling financially due to my earnings. Thanks to that, Aaron has been able to save money and has moved into the same high-rise condo. Whenever I bring over some side dishes, he is always delighted and grateful. I'm truly happy. Being able to work at my own pace and having my beloved Aaron nearby makes every day immensely joyful for me. Years have passed. Today is a special day. Mom, I want to introduce someone to you. It's the day Aaron is bringing his fiancée. She is someone I've known well for a long time since she has been dating Aaron since high school. Ben doesn't know about this because it would cause trouble if he found out. Well, I doubt he would be interested anyway. Aaron is a bit too kind, so I feel reassured to entrust him to his capable fiancé. Just this time there is a formal greeting as fiancé and mother, so both of us are somewhat nervous. We know each other, so relax. By the way, there's something important I need to tell you. To my surprise, she was already pregnant with Aaron's child. That's what led to a prompt marriage. But seeing them so happy, I sent my heartfelt blessings. Determined not to become like my mother-in-law, I decided to support them while maintaining a healthy distance. Thanks to such measures, I feel that the relationship with my daughter-in-law is being well maintained. Occasionally, they come to show me their child's face, and we have been going out more frequently without burdening each other. Contrarily, I am unaware of the current situation of Ben and my mother-in-law as they have been abandoned by others. One's actions ultimately return to oneself. I must act carefully. With this awareness, I continue to work and handle household chores within my limits, enjoying a peaceful daily life.